Chapter 2070. The members of AST were infuriated by Dustless's arrogance. They glared at Dustless and stomped their feet in anger. They were not happy with Dustless's arrogant attitude. At the same time, in another direction, two pairs of sneaky eyes were quietly sizing up Dustless and the members of AST. Kotori, let's get out of here. This is not the place for us. Shido tugged on Itsuka Kotori's sleeve and looked at the ruins. He couldn't help but shudder and took a few steps back with fear on his face. You're not very useful, the immature Itsuka Kotori sighed softly, and her fair face was filled with extraordinary calmness and wisdom. Kotori knew Shido's special ability. Although she could seal spirits, there was nothing she could do. Asking Dustless to go on a date with Shido? Kotori got goosebumps when she thought about it. If she did that, Dustless would go crazy and destroy the world. The only way is to make him like this world. Kotori and AST had different ideologies. ST was an organization that was hostile to the spirits and would destroy them. Ratatosker, on the other hand, was a member of Kotori's Ratatosker. I have no choice but to do it myself. Itsuka Kotori's eyes were filled with courage. It seemed like she had made a decision. She released an unimaginably powerful aura. Even Itsuka Shido was shocked. Why did his sister, who had always been weak, suddenly change so much at this moment? Even her aura had become much stronger. What are you looking at? Itsuka Kotori glared at the dazed Itsuka Shido. She crossed her arms in front of her chest and analyzed in her mind. Although I don't have the power to control the world, I don't plan to seal this guy away. I need to make him like this world and not destroy it. Itsuka Kotori's goal was quite simple. She didn't have many extravagant hopes. She simply hoped that through her own efforts, Wu Chen would like this world. It would be best if he could integrate into human society. As for sealing spirits, Kotori didn't have the ability to do so. It was Shido's unique ability. Elves were unfamiliar with the unfamiliar environment, especially AST, who was very unkind. They continuously shattered Dustless's body, so it was inevitable that the elves would be hostile to this planet. Itsuka Kotori decided to take matters into her own hands. She hoped that through her own efforts, Dustless would like this world and temporarily stabilize his emotions. You can go back now. On the other side, Dustless glanced at Origami Kitsune and the others and suddenly gave the order to expel them. You want us to leave? Origami Kitsune looked at Wu Chen suspiciously, thinking that she had heard wrongly. However, seeing Wu Chen's serious look, it didn't seem like he was lying. The group of teammates looked at each other and immediately left. Remember this. Glancing at the members of ST, Dustless said coldly, swords have no eyes. If you dare to trouble me again, you will end up like this. As his voice faded, Dustless suddenly lifted his right foot and stomped onto the ground. Crack, crack, crack. The seemingly stable ground crumbled in an instant. Cracks spread out for dozens of meters. Thump. The sudden violent tremor caught Origami Kitsune and the others off guard. They couldn't withstand a single blow and fell to the ground in a sorry state. Damn you. The members of AST glared angrily at Dustless. Seeing Dustless's attitude of looking down on an ant, they were all furious. I'm not kidding around. He radiated the hostility hidden in his body. A large amount of cold mist visible to the naked eye drifted out. Crack, crack, crack. A layer of crystal clear ice formed on the ground. It quickly spread and devoured the ground. What a terrifying killing intent. The group of AST members looked at Dustless in panic. They felt as if they had fallen into hell. You can go now. Remember, next time, my orders are the supreme order. Even if you have to sacrifice your lives, you must carry out my will. Dustless said sternly. His tone was colder than ice. He then retracted his killing intent. Even if it was just a tiny bit, it was not something these girls could bear. Where there's life, there's hope. Retreat for now. Tabichi Origami looked at Dustless unwillingly. In the end, she chose to leave. The enemy was too strong. It was beyond the limit of what they could contend with. It's about time for me to find a place to stay. After seeing that the AST members had disappeared, Wu Chen sighed. He looked around and saw a tall building in the distance. Then he walked over decisively. He let the AST members go because he had no other choice. After all, they had just arrived and had no place to stay. It wouldn't be too late to kidnap them after finding a suitable base. Yo! A clear and melodious voice suddenly came, and Wu Chen's line of sight subconsciously swept over. She had a head of fiery red hair that was tied up in a ponytail. She had a lollipop in her mouth, and a strange light flashed through her beautiful eyes. Her cheeky little face was slightly raised, and her skin was as white as snow. Her cheeks were so perfect that no one could find fault with them. Is this Itsuka Kotori? Dustless's mind went blank for a moment. He stared at the girl's delicate face with a strange expression. He could vaguely see the hidden cunning in the depths of his eyes. Itsuka Kotori wouldn't think that I'm an elf and want to date me, right? Dustless shook his head like a rattledrum. He then took a deep look at Itsuka Kotori. He suddenly understood what she meant. She probably wanted him to like or even fall in love with this world and not destroy it. In fact, even without Itsuka Kotori's reminder, Dustless would never destroy a world unless the entire human race stood against him. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2071. How strange. Wuxian looked at Itsuka Kotori with a weird expression. It was a new experience to be conquered by a 12 or 13-year-old girl. He had never experienced it before. It was a new experience, but at the same time he was speechless. This is not a bad idea. Dustless looked at Itsuka Kotori with interest and said with a smile, "Little girl, I am not familiar with this place. Why don't you show me around? I will get a reward if I complete the mission." Little girl? Itsuka Kotori's face darkened when she heard Qinfan's words. "I'm happy to help." Itsuka Kotori pursed her lips and smiled. Her smile was as beautiful as a blooming flower. She was so young, but her smile was already very alluring. Very good. However, Wuxian just nodded slightly. His clean and white skin didn't have the slightest reaction. His calm eyes didn't have any ripples. How can this guy not be seduced by me? How dare you? Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless's calm demeanor and couldn't help but feel frustrated. It was rare for her to doubt her looks. If possible, she hoped that Dustless would be seduced by her. It was a date, and it would be a failure if she couldn't even seduce her lover. What do you like? I will take you there. Itsuka Kotori rolled her eyes and a series of plans appeared in her mind. A confident smile appeared on her delicate face again. What do you like? Dustless lowered his head and thought for a while. He suddenly realized that he didn't have any other hobbies in his long life other than power. Let's go eat. Dustless couldn't think of any other hobbies. He had reached his current level of power, and all his desires had been fulfilled. What other hobbies did he have? He didn't even need them. Instead, he felt hungry. What a strange fairy. She glanced at Wuxian with a strange look. She pouted her pink lips and said with a smile, "I'm familiar with the place nearby. Let's go on a date." "No, let's go for a meal." Itsuka Kotori quickly changed her mind. She looked at Dustless and saw that his expression didn't change. She heaved a sigh of relief, but at the same time she felt a little frustrated. If she couldn't seduce him on a date, what else could it be? Moreover, Itsuka Kotori's original intention was to make Wuxian like this world. His indifferent attitude towards everything was a failure. What was it if not failure? Kotori. Watching Itsuka Kotori drag Dustless away, Itsuka Shido felt his heart was filled with a sense of emptiness. It was as if something that belonged to him was suddenly taken away. It was very uncomfortable. Half an hour later, Itsuka Kotori took Dustless around the food street. In order to make Dustless like this world, Itsuka Kotori spared no effort. Sadly, Wuxian remained calm from the beginning to the end. The number of times he spoke to Itsuka Kotori during this period could be counted on one hand. He only nodded or replied with a yes. This wooden fairy. The bustling street had returned to normal after the spatial tremor. Itsuka Kotori was holding a glass of juice in her hand, and she was sucking on it with a straw. Her face was puffed up, and she looked rather cute as she panted with anger. Itsuka Kotori asked Dustless about his past, but he was always evasive. Sometimes he even treated Itsuka Kotori as if she was invisible. This is the most depressing date I have ever had. Itsuka Kotori stomped her feet in frustration. No matter how hard she tried, Dustless didn't seem to care at all. Sometimes he even thought the boring advertisements were more interesting than her. No wonder I am not charming at all. Itsuka Kotori touched her face, thinking there was something on it. Oh right. Dustless suddenly thought of something and asked in a serious tone, "Is there an empty apartment nearby? I need to buy a shelter from the wind and rain." Since he was already here, he couldn't just stay on the streets all day. He had to find a suitable place to shelter himself from the storm. An apartment. Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless in surprise. She frowned. Fairies could constantly release their psychic waves. It was only a matter of time before they were caught if they moved into an apartment. Plus, Dustless might start a war with the humans. He might not be able to destroy the world, but he could easily destroy a city. If that's the case, why don't you stay at my place? Itsuka Kotori thought her place was more suitable for Dustless. She could take care of him if anything happened. Besides, it was her mission to save the fairies. Your place. Dustless looked up and met Itsuka Kotori's clear eyes. She was looking at him with open eyes. Dustless didn't sense any evil intentions in her eyes. This girl is quite bold. Isn't she afraid of inviting a wolf into her house? I remember Itsuka Kotori has a brother called Itsuka Shido. Dustless was surprised. Itsuka Kotori's action was like walking on a tightrope. I don't mean any harm. Dustless stared at Itsuka Kotori for a few more seconds, and his impression of her increased. He knew that this little girl wanted him to live in peace with the humans, and she had no ill intentions. Without a doubt, Itsuka Kotori really wanted to help the elves. However, it was worth mentioning that Dustless wasn't a fairy. He was just an imposter. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2072. Will you agree? Itsuka Kotori clenched her fists tightly. She looked very nervous. After all, elves gave people the impression that they were extremely mysterious creatures, and it was extremely difficult to communicate with them. Getting along with humans and coexisting in the same space was even more difficult. No problem. After a few seconds of silence, Dustless was surprisingly easy to talk to. He even smiled at Itsuka Kotori. That's great. Come home with me. Itsuka Kotori wiped the sweat off her face when she heard Dustless agree. She thought to herself, this elf is not as hard to deal with as I thought. In her mind, elves were vulgar people who would start a fight at the slightest provocation. Itsuka Kotori was surprised that Dustless was so well-mannered. Very easy to deal with. If all elves are like this, I don't need Shido's help. Itsuka Kotori's eyes narrowed into crescents. She looked at Wu Chen with confidence. At the same time, he opened his mouth and was about to set the rules. However, Wu Chen's voice sounded in advance. You have a brother, right? I think his name is Itsuka Shido. I'm sorry, but I'm not interested in living under the same roof as a man. So, please ask him to move out. Wu Chen looked into Itsuka Kotori's eyes, his tone was firm and unquestionable. Huh. Itsuka Kotori was stunned when she heard Dustless's words. You want Shido to move out? Are you kidding me? You need to know who you are. We are the owners and you are just a lodger. Itsuka Kotori rolled up her sleeves and resisted the urge to beat Dustless to death. She warned loudly, Kid, get this straight. You're the invader. An outsider wants the original owner to move out? Take over the nest? Not a chance. Is that so? Hearing this, Wu Chen just nodded slightly, then suddenly turned around and left. Then I'll take my leave. You don't have to look for me. I'm going to destroy the world now that I'm heartbroken. This bastard. Itsuka Kotori's mouth twitched and she almost swallowed the lollipop in her mouth. Stop right there. Itsuka Kotori yelled and chased after Qin Xiaobei. Little girl, you think you can fight with me? Don't overestimate yourself. Dustless looked back at Itsuka Kotori and smiled. Stop right there. Itsuka Kotori stood in front of Dustless with her hands on her hips and said, You win. I agree to your terms. That's more like it. Hearing this, Wu Chen chuckled and then said meaningfully, Soon you will feel lucky for your decision. Itsuka Shido's apartment. You want me to move out? Shido stared at Itsuka Kotori in bewilderment. His head was buzzing. He widened his eyes and looked at the helpless girl. Then he looked at Wu Chen who was resting on the sofa. Suddenly he felt that his brain wasn't enough. Itsuka Shido almost vomited blood. His position in the family was lower than an outsider like Dustless. Cough cough cough. Itsuka Kotori coughed awkwardly. She felt sorry for Itsuka Shido since he was her brother. But she remembered Dustless's terms and conditions and could only accept it. Shido, don't worry and move out. I'll take care of the house from now on. Itsuka Kotori patted her chest like an adult. Someone will take care of us. Someone else will take care of the cooking. Someone will take care of us. Itsuka Shido looked at Itsuka Kotori in shock. His sister was good at eating, but cooking wasn't her forte. Could it be him? Itsuka Shido looked at Dustless suspiciously. He didn't think that Dustless knew how to cook. His skin was as white as snow and his fingers were long and straight. He didn't look like someone who had cooked before. Creak. At the same time, the closed door was pushed open and a beautiful figure came into view. It's her? Dustless muttered. His calm eyes rippled with surprise. Dustless was familiar with this person. It was a young woman with a beautiful face and a perfect body. She was one of the prettiest women in the country. The only thing that was not complimentary about her was that she looked like she was in a trance. Her eyes were dark and she was wobbling as if she could fall at any moment. It was as if she hadn't slept for years. So it's Murasame Rain. This unreliable woman was Murasame Rain, the analyst of Ratatosker. This is interesting. Does this woman know how to cook? I think she's here to monitor me and test my data. Dustless closed his eyes again. He wasn't surprised. With Itsuka Kotori's status, it wasn't a problem to mobilize her. There had never been a male elf before. Sending Murasame Rain to test Dustless's data was normal. These guys really think I'm an elf. Dustless sighed helplessly. It wasn't a good thing to be treated as an elf. He would be watched and watched. Sometimes there would even be flies like AST harassing him. It was really annoying. What bad luck. Itsuka Shido looked at Dustless unhappily and suddenly went to his room. It seemed like he was going to pack his clothes and leave. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2073. Time flew by and 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Itsuka Shido's home. No, it should be Dustless's home now. The former had been expelled, and now there were only 3 people left in his home: Dustless, Itsuka Kotori, and Rain Murasame. As for Itsuka Shido, he was kicked out of the house. Strange. Rain Murasame frowned and looked at Dustless, and the dark circles under her eyes wrinkled a few times. I didn't detect psychic waves from Dustless. Psychic waves could be detected from elves, but Dustless didn't have this kind of energy fluctuation, which indirectly indicated that Dustless was not an elf. Not an elf. Looking at Rain Murasame suspiciously, Itsuka Kotori rarely doubted this confidant. If he's not an elf, Dustless is even more strange. Thinking of the battle that day, Itsuka Kotori cautiously said, "He used overwhelming strength to defeat AST that day. If he's not an elf, doesn't that mean Dustless is a human? Lane, have you seen such a powerful human like Dustless?" No, if Dustless is really a human, he's definitely the strongest one. Rain Murasame's tone couldn't help but stagnate. It was the first time she encountered such an incredible and bizarre event. A human, without using the slightest equipment, defeated AST with overwhelming strength, which was an extremely amazing event in itself. So, we must pay closer attention to him. Itsuka Kotori crossed her arms, touched her chin and wisely said, "This kind of person is no less dangerous than elves. We can't be careless." "But who will monitor you when you go to school?" Rain Murasame asked. It's very simple. Itsuka Kotori, who was wearing pajamas, walked elegantly and skipped toward Dustless, and the corner of her mouth revealed an imperceptible arc. "What's the matter?" Dustless, who was bored reading the newspaper, asked flatly. His tone was always calm, and it gave people the feeling that he was as calm as thunder. Hearing Wu Chen's arrogant tone, Itsuka Kotori was furious. She said angrily, "Watch your tone. The owner of this house is called Itsuka." "You're right." Dustless was non-committal. He lowered his head and said, "The sign at the door is indeed Dustless's house. I think it should be changed to Dustless's house now. From now on, this is my territory." Pucci. Murasame Rain, who was drinking milk, spat it out and looked at Dustless with a cold face. She secretly gave him a thumbs up. Daring to say such words in front of Itsuka Kotori, this guy must be brave. "Don't push your luck." Itsuka Kotori was infuriated. She pointed a trembling finger at Dustless and scolded, "Shameless! How shameless can you be?" Suddenly, Itsuka Kotori's voice stopped abruptly. She suddenly felt cold all over, as if some prehistoric creature was staring at her. She couldn't help but shiver uncontrollably. Shoo shoo shoo. A chilly wind started to blow in the large room. The floor started to freeze and the window was the most obvious. A layer of ice blocked the sunlight from entering the room. It was as if she had been transported to hell in an instant. There was a suffocating pressure all around. She felt uncomfortable. She followed the source and was shocked to find that the person who dragged her to hell was Dustless with a cold face. "I'm pushing my luck? Little girl, although I won't lower myself to the same level as a 12 or 13-year-old girl, you still have to be careful with your words." Dustless put the newspaper aside and looked at Itsuka Kotori. He explained casually, "Do you think I don't know what you're thinking? You just want to test my personal data. How boring. Haven't you two been doing this for the past 3 days? You found out. Murasame Rain's pupils froze. She looked at Dustless in disbelief. She thought she did it quietly, but Dustless had already noticed it. Nonsense. Itsuka Kotori snorted and retorted, since you have already noticed it, why didn't you expose us? Why did you expose your personal data to us? It's up to you. Wu Qin waved his hand in boredom and laughed involuntarily. He sighed in his heart, no matter what, I'm already a few hundred years old. I can't possibly fight with a 12 or 13 years old little girl, right? I don't have much to say. I just want to tell you. Wu Qin cleared his throat and said in an inviolable tone, the land under my feet is my territory. That's all. In other words, this planet is mine. What kind of barbaric system is this? Itsuka Kotori and Murasame Rain looked at Dustless with dissatisfaction. They thought Dustless was taking over Itsuka Kotori's home. Who would have thought that he wanted to take over Earth? Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, a violent tremor suddenly spread from the horizon, and the blue sky trembled fiercely. Spacequake detected in this area. Residents nearby, please evacuate immediately. Spacequake detected in this area. Residents nearby, please evacuate immediately. The ear-piercing sound of the alarm echoed through the clouds and into the earphones of everyone within a radius of tens of kilometers. Itsuka Kotori and Dustless, who were nearby, heard it loud and clear. Seems like the elves are really here this time. Dustless narrowed his eyes and looked at the distorted sphere. A strange light flashed in his eyes. Is that the Night Sword God Toka? P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2074. Among the elves that appeared recently, Dustless thought for a while, and it seemed that there was only one Night Sword God Toka. Kakaka. The strange energy ball in the void continued to expand, occupying the surrounding sky. The expansion speed was extremely fast, and even the blue sky was covered in the blink of an eye. Boom. The buildings around the energy ball suffered a devastating blow one after another, turning into barren ruins. They were shattered by the powerful shockwave, and the bare ground was like a desert, with sand and dust filling the sky. Boom. The violent airwave hit Itsuka Kotori's house, and the stable house suddenly shook, and it was about to collapse. Really, there is a limit to how unscrupulous you can be. Dustless frowned, and his eyes turned into eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and then a violent chakra burst out, and the golden evil energy covered the whole house. The violent vibration stopped, and the house was protected by Kansusanu's body. What is this? Murasame Ling-in looked at Wu Qin in shock, with a face full of astonishment and surprise. Originally, Murasame Rain was still worried in the heart of the space shock, but she didn't know why. The moment this golden energy swept out from Wu Qin's body, her irritated heart immediately became as calm as still water, which was very strange. Don't worry about it, leave here with me, Rain. Itsuka Kotori looked at Murasame Rain seriously, and then the two quickly exchanged a look, and then quickly left under Dustless's gaze. She probably went to find Itsuka Shido. Looking at the two's back, Dustless was too lazy to ask more and simply sat on the sofa, drinking coffee while reading the newspaper leisurely. If Itsuka Shido could save the world, then he could count on him, and Dustless was not interested in saving the entire human race, and the life and death of the people had nothing to do with him. But, looking at the messy world outside the window, Dustless's eyes suddenly narrowed as he muttered to himself, is it really appropriate to be so presumptuous on my planet? Night Blade God 10 fragrances. Dustless placed his right thumb on the sofa and tapped it rhythmically. A cold light condensed in his pupils as terrifying as a blade. A sense of oppression that was several times more terrifying than that of the elves circulated around him. If the spacequake caused by the elves was a natural disaster, then Dustless was as terrifying as the Grim Reaper. Commander, isn't it too early to count on the young soldier? Kotori and Rain Murasame rushed to Shido's school. Along the way, Rain Murasame couldn't help but murmur. After all, Shido had no knowledge in this area. If he didn't tame the elves, it would be bad. Do we have any other choices besides Shirdao? Kotori glanced at Rain Murasame and knew that her worries were unfounded, so she said helplessly, Rain, it's not about whether it's appropriate or not, it's just that we don't have any other choice. Kotori couldn't think of any other plan other than using Shido's power to tame the elves. Although Dustless was an exception, Kotori didn't think that other elves were as easy to deal with as Dustless. Elves were naturally repulsed by unfamiliar environments and humans. Bang! Inside Shido's classroom, Itsuka Kotori kicked open the classroom door and dragged Shido out of there, ignoring everyone's shock. Shido, the mission of saving the world is yours. Kotori dragged Shido away after saying that. As for Rain Murasame, she stayed behind to mediate the situation for Kotori. Other than Shido, no one else could deal with the elves. Shido was the only one who had the power to seal the elves, so he was the only choice. Kotori, let go of me. Inside the hallway, Shido, who was almost strangled to death, struggled to get up. This was the first time he saw Kotori being so rough. Don't waste time, come with me now. Kotori glared at Shido and dragged him to the center of the spacequake. That's the center of the spacequake, are you crazy? Shido was shocked when he saw where Kotori was going. He yelled, come with me now, kids shouldn't be messing around. Unfortunately, Kotori didn't appreciate it. She didn't even look at him as she dragged Shido out of the school. The commander mode Itsuka Kotori was indeed extraordinary. She was strong in every aspect. Seeing that her door was locked from the inside and she didn't have the key, she kicked it without hesitation. Bam! Not sure where Itsuka Kotori got her strength from, but she kicked the door open. This little girl is really merciless. Be careful, this is my house. Wuxian looked over and couldn't help but shake his head. When he saw Itsuka Shido's bitter face, he pretended not to see anything and continued reading the newspaper. Your house. The owner of this house is Shido. Itsuka Kotori almost jumped up and glared at Dustless. She had never heard of such a domineering elf like Dustless. The planet he was stepping on was hers. How could he be so domineering and barbaric? This kind of rude and unreasonable behavior was even worse than robbery. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2075. The door of your house. The owner of this house is Itsuka. Itsuka Kotori almost jumped out of her seat and glared at Dustless. She had never heard of an elf as domineering as Dustless. The planet he was standing on was hers. How could he be so barbaric? This kind of rude and unreasonable behavior was even worse than robbery. Staring at the angry girl, Wuxian just smiled gently without saying anything. Boom boom boom. At this moment, the violent tremors came again. The surface of the ground was easily torn apart, revealing shocking cracks. The vast land seemed to be on top of the sea, swaying non-stop. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. Kotori, let's get out of here. It's not safe here. We might be destroyed by the elves at any time. Itsuka Shido was in a terrible state. His body was trembling in fear. This was normal. After all, he was a human. Most humans would feel fear when facing an elf. No. Itsuka Kotori rejected Itsuka Shido's suggestion and quickly explained, Shido, I have a mission for you. You will go on a date with that elf for me later. A date? Itsuka Shido's face twitched. He looked at Itsuka Kotori speechlessly. He could go on a date with anyone, but he had to go on a date with an elf. Wasn't this pushing himself into a fire pit? It was an obvious act of suicide. Let me explain. Itsuka Kotori sighed and began to explain the nature of the date. This is too much. Dustless walked to the window lazily and looked up at the sky. His gaze froze when he saw the girl standing in the sky. He mumbled to himself, Night Sword God Toka? She seems to be quite strong. The girl standing in the sky had a head of long purple hair. She held a chilling sword in her hand. Her eyes were as dazzling as purple gems. Her skin was fair and flawless. Her perfect face had a hint of sadness. Her eyes were gloomy and hesitant. It seemed like she was unfamiliar with this world. So this is Night Sword God Toka. Dustless nodded and sat down on the sofa to read the newspaper. None of this had anything to do with him. Do you understand? Shudao. 5 minutes later, Itsuka Kotori explained the meaning of date, and said sternly, no matter what, you have to deal with that guy. Shido wanted to cry, but he had no tears. He wanted to reject this mission, but Kotori glared at him. You help me from the side. She took another glance at Dustless and said in a righteous tone, you have to pay if you want to eat here. You're the one who invited me to stay here? Dustless glanced at Itsuka Kotori and said, help you take care of that elf? Sorry, I don't have much time and I don't like to meddle in other people's business. Anyone would reject a mission that didn't have any benefits and would bring a lot of trouble. You heartless bastard. Kotori glared at Dustless and dragged Shido away. Dustless was acting shamelessly, but Kotori didn't have the means to punish Dustless. Itsuka Shido. Dustless stared at Itsuka Shido's back and muttered to himself, "This kid seems to have the ability to seal the elf's power. Normal humans don't have that kind of power. I guess it's just SOSO. But..." Dustless sighed and said, "Itsuka Kotori's stupid ideas will only harm Itsuka Shido." Dustless still remembered that in the original work, Itsuka Kotori and her subordinates often came up with all kinds of bad ideas to trick Itsuka Shido. If Shido wasn't smart enough, he would have been killed by Yusuke Toka. "Shido, listen to me." Itsuka Kotori pulled Shido's arm and said in a serious tone, "You will go on a date with the princess later. Elves aren't bad people. You should make friends with her and try your best to enlighten her. Make her like this world." Itsuka Shido's mouth twitched and he asked in a gloomy tone, "Me? Go on a date with her? Are you sure you won't be killed by the princess?" "Of course not." Itsuka Kotori popped a lollipop into her mouth and smiled proudly. "After detailed analysis, there is a 30% chance that Princess will be angry, but she will definitely not kill you. Princess is not the kind of person who would kill innocent people. She accidentally caused the space tremor and you have an honest face." Kotori gave Shido a thumbs up and told him not to worry. Honest man's face. Shido touched his face and couldn't help but smile bitterly. Kotori was looking down on him. "What are you waiting for?" Kotori kicked the cowardly Itsuka Shido and scolded, "We just got the exact data from Ratatosker. Princess is in a good mood right now. If AST is going to attack us later, you will definitely be killed if you provoke her." What Itsuka Kotori didn't know was that Dustless had done something out of the ordinary, and it had angered Toka, who was in a relatively stable mood. It was not that Dustless was deliberately trapping Ido Shirdao. Everyone had a limit to their tolerance. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2076. Boom, boom, boom. In the boundless sky, a raging wave flashed. Ha! Such a huge commotion was like a shooting star in the night sky. It was too eye-catching and Nightsword God Toka looked over. "Fierce Slayer." She waved her hand and Nightsword God Toka slashed down with her blade. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. It was as if even the air had been sliced apart, and a clear crack appeared in the vast void. Boom, boom, boom. Fierce Slayer's sharp edge collided with the incoming slash, causing the boundless sky to tremble. Bus, bus, bus. The deathly silent void let out a series of extremely human-like wails. If one looked up at the sky, they would be surprised to find that the lazy white clouds had all been swept away. Boom, boom. The two equally powerful moves collided violently. Immediately after, an endless shockwave swept out. Yidao Shintaxiang, who was caught off guard, was violently attacked. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Shido looked up at the shadow in the sky and saw Toka's face almost freeze. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He looked back at Kotori, who was hiding in the dark, and sighed helplessly. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Going on a date with such a monster. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. You've got guts. Night Sword God raised his sword again and looked at Itoka Shido coldly. It was worth mentioning that the person who had attacked Night Sword God Toxiang had nothing to do with Itoka Shido. It was Dustless. As for why he suppressed Night Blade God 10 Incense, the reason was even simpler. Dustless was not the kind of person who would remain silent after being slapped in the face, regardless of who it was. The strength of the elves seems to be not bad. Looking up at the aftermath of the sky that had not completely dissipated, Dustless nodded secretly. It seemed that the person in the ghoul's world he had encountered before was much stronger. "This is going to be a good show." Dustless had a gloating smile on his face as he stared at the petite figure in the void. The words on Toka's face were almost engraved with the words, "I am very unhappy." How dare Itsuka Shido approach her so recklessly? He didn't know how to spell the word death. Swish, swish. Fierce Killer Duke abruptly swung down, and an incomparably biting cold light fell beside Itoka Shido. Boom, boom, boom. The ground on the right side of his feet suddenly exploded, and a horrifying hole was created. The ground was shaking, and Itoka Shido's body couldn't continue to maintain balance. Plop. Itoka Shido was careless and fell to the ground. This is bad. Seeing such a scene, Itsuka Kotori couldn't help but regret. Letting Shido, a human, touch the elves on Wrath's head, wasn't this asking for trouble? Why did you suddenly attack me? Itoka Shido, who fell down, was confused. He looked up at Toka Toka, who was standing in the void with a cold temperament. He looked at her blankly. He didn't seem to have offended this female elf. Could it be? Itoka Shido was also a smart person. Thinking of the attack just now, he wanted to cry but had no tears. He was sweating in his heart and thought, did she think that I was the one who attacked her? Thinking of this, Itoka Shido's body trembled twice. This was simply an unexpected disaster. The attack just now was done by Dustless. It had nothing to do with him. Shoo shoo shoo. At the same time, a bright light flashed across the sky. Toka Toka also landed beside Itoka Shido. You? Toka Shido looked down at Itoka Shido and asked in an unfriendly tone, You? Are you here to kill me too? Were you the one who attacked me just now? As soon as he finished speaking, Toka raised his sword with a ferocious expression. If Itoka Shido didn't give a reasonable explanation, he would cut him down with his sword. It was a very threatening sight. I heard you, it has nothing to do with me. I am here to help you. Itoka Shido quickly refused. His face was pale with fear, but he had no choice but to face it. Itoka Shido couldn't help but tremble when he saw Toka Toka's ferocious look. He subconsciously took 2 steps back. Oh no. Seeing this, Itoka Kotori's heart skipped a beat. An indescribable sense of uneasiness spread through every inch of her body. Her heart raced. It was filled with an indescribable sense of uneasiness. Especially when she saw Toka Toka's sword hovering above Itoka Shido's head. She was sweating profusely. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 tips plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 auto subscriptions plus updates. Itsuka Kotori smiled happily and let out a sigh of relief. This guy might be a little cold, but he seems to be quite reliable in times of crisis. At least he's more reliable than Shido. Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless in a new light. Let me tell you something, Itsuka Kotori whispered into Dustless's ear. Try to cheer up, princess, and communicate with her. Remember to go on dates in the future. It's best if you can. I'm sorry. Unexpectedly, Wuxian was not interested in listening to Itsuka Kotori's nonsense. He interrupted her bluntly and a frivolous smile appeared on his face. Compared to dating, I prefer to use violence to curb violence. Dustless wasn't good at dating and at the same time he didn't want to waste his time. If that was the case, he might as well use violence to curb violence. Curb violence with violence. Itsuka Kotori was startled by Dustless's shocking words. It sounded like he was going to use his strength to suppress Toka. What would happen if the 2 elves fought? The world might not be destroyed, but this city would become a disaster area. You think silence can solve everything? On the other side, Toka looked down at the terrified Itsuka Shido. Fierce Killer Duke had already cut off Itsuka Shido's head. Even his hair was cut off. Itsuka Shido's expression changed drastically. He felt defeated. How could he strike up a conversation with Toka at such a critical moment? Itsuka Kotori's plan was just wishful thinking. No matter which world it was, after all was said and done, the stronger one was the one who had the final say. Then die. Seeing Itsuka Shido's silence, Toka Shido lost his patience and swung Fierce Killer Duke. Shoo shoo shoo. In the nick of time, a streak of light shot over and grabbed at Fierce Killer Duke. Clang. His arm jerked and a rare look of shock appeared on his face. Before he knew it, a cold figure had appeared in front of him. Behave atrociously on my planet, little girl. Do you know what this means? Wu Chen's emotionless tone came out of his mouth. His face was as indifferent as a stone. Phew, Itsuka Shido heaved a sigh of relief. Just as he was about to express his gratitude, Dustless spoke first. I was just asked to do this. You don't have to thank me. Dustless didn't have a good impression of Itsuka Shido, but he didn't hate him either. All in all, he felt that Itsuka Shido was just an ordinary person. Whether he lived or died in the end had nothing to do with him. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2078. You, staring at the cold face of Dustless, Itsuka Shido's lips twitched a few times. He wanted to continue to thank him, but for some reason, his throat felt as if it was stuffed with bones, making it difficult for him to speak. Dustless radiated a cold aura as if he was not from this world. Itsuka Shido felt that it was difficult to communicate with him, just like how a human could never communicate with an eagle soaring in the sky. There was a huge gap between them. Were you the one who ambushed me? Night Sword God Toka's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly, and a dangerous light flickered in her eyes. The current Night Sword God Toka had not been enlightened by Itsuka Shido, so her personality was still very violent. If there was a disagreement or if there was a suspect, she would not hesitate to kill the other party. Of course, this was not Night Sword God Toka's fault. After all, she had been hunted by AST before, and she had also been hated by humans. She had even been mercilessly hunted down by humans. It was normal for her to hate humans and reject this world. Ambush you? Hearing this, Dustless's eyes suddenly became playful. He stared at Night Sword God Toka for a while, and his eyes were as clear as a microscope. He did not let go of any flaw in Night Sword God Toka. What are you looking at? Night Sword God Toka's pretty face changed slightly, and her tone was very unpleasant. Being stared at by Dustless made her feel extremely uncomfortable, especially with that aggressive gaze. It made Night Sword God Toka feel like she was stripped naked, and her naked body was exposed to Dustless's eyes. In short, Night Sword God Toka felt that her spirit had been violated by Dustless. Ambush you? I just think it's too funny. You know, the moment you opened your mouth, I could have killed you 1,000 times. Dustless spoke frankly, and his words were filled with deep disdain and arrogance. What did you say? Hearing this, Night Sword God Toka's pretty face was filled with hostility. She looked at Dustless with hostility and shook Night Sword God Toka. If you can try. You asked for it. As soon as his voice fell, countless photons floated out of Dustless's body and rushed forward. So fast. Night Sword God 10 Fragrance's pupils shrank as he watched the photon disappear in an instant. He subconsciously swung Fierce Slayer at the flash, and a huge cold light pierced through Dustless's body. Pucci. The saber's momentum was very strong. The attacking light exploded like a puddle of water, scattering everywhere. Is that all? Night Blade God 10 Fragrance frowned slightly. She sensed that Dustless's aura had completely disappeared. Her small lips curled up slightly as she mumbled, as expected, people who like to spout nonsense are pitifully weak. He shouldn't have died so easily, right? Itsuka Kotori clenched her fists when she realized that Dustless had disappeared. Buzz buzz buzz. There was a strange ripple in the void, and then the collapsed photons gathered again, quietly gathering behind the Night Blade God's back like ghosts. Little girl, you're too arrogant. Dustless's indifferent tone startled Night Blade God 10 Incense. He quickly turned around and saw Dustless looking back at him. Damn it. Isn't he dead? Isn't he the one I just hit? Night Blade God 10 Fragrance widened her eyes and looked at Dustless as if she had seen a ghost. Shoo shoo shoo. At the same time, Dustless swung his saber and a deadly light came at him. Night Blade God 10 Fragrance sensed the danger and quickly backed off. This was the first time she felt such a strange and deadly pressure, death. As expected, using violence to curb violence. Itsuka Kotori was stunned when she saw Dustless had forced the powerful elf to back off. To be honest, she and Murasame Rain didn't sense the energy wave that belonged to the elf from Dustless's body. In other words, Dustless was just a dangerous human. However, a human from the Confucian school was able to force the elf to back off, and he was even a powerful being like Night Blade God 10 Fragrance. Itsuka Kotori was stunned. Shoo shoo shoo. Dustless's heavenly sword of gathering clouds suddenly released a huge golden sword pressure. Everything that came into contact with the golden light was easily crushed like paper. Boom boom boom. The terrifying attack was like the angry roar of the heavens. In the end, it turned into a huge golden light that crushed toward the Night Blade God Toxiang with a monstrous aura. Gulp. To be honest, this was the first time Night Blade God 10 Fragrance saw such a powerful attack. She stood still and was stunned. Damn it. I can only try. Looking at Dustless with a gloomy gaze, Night Blade God 10 Fragrance's messy hair was covered in bean-sized tears. He tightly gripped his greatsword, Fierce Slayer, with both hands bursting with a tremendous aura, as if he was going to fight to the death. Buzz buzz buzz. The thick light gathered on the sword and slowly became bigger. The tip of the sword even released a burst of impact that even the oxygen in the atmosphere was bounced away. Crack crack crack. Even the surface of the ground around them began to crack, revealing a series of ghastly fissures. How rare. Dustless naturally noticed the series of problems that Night Blade God 10 Fragrance caused. He couldn't help but nod in surprise with a hint of admiration on his face. Although Night Blade God 10 Fragrance was young, his strength was not bad. He had traveled through so many worlds. Frankly speaking, this Night Blade God 10 fragrance in front of him was not bad. He was only 16 years old. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Enraged, Night Blade God Toxiang slashed out with all his might with his dangerous divine sword. Dustless was powerful, but his mouth was even worse. A massive slash shot out, tearing the surface of the earth to shreds the moment it was unleashed. The slash was filled with an ominous killing intent that could destroy all things. The sword was just like its name, the final sword. Everything that came into contact with it would reveal their final side before they all collapsed. But that wasn't the scariest part. The slash has become bigger? Wu Chen's pupils shrank. The huge slash seemed to have taken steroids. It kept getting stronger and stronger, destroying everything in its path. Finally, it turned into a huge solid blade that was dozens of meters long, just like the anger of heaven. Kid, you're dead for sure now. Night Blade God 10 fragrances beamed from ear to ear. Seeing Wu Chen's cautious expression, she immediately smiled proudly. Oh no. Itsuka Kotori was sweating profusely. She stared at Wu Chen as if she could empathize with him. Her petite body was trembling, and her beautiful eyes were filled with fear. The power of Night Sword God Toka's attack was beyond Itsuka Kotori's expectation. It's not good to be so violent at such a young age, Wu Chen said in a low voice. His thumb-length short black hair was blown to one side by the biting cold sword pressure. The sudden attack was about to tear him apart. Dustless didn't panic in the face of such a brutal attack. His face was as calm as a rock. He raised his right hand. On the tip of his right thumb, a golden ball of light appeared. It was about the size of a fist. It looked ordinary and did not have the slightest lethality. It was just like an ordinary light bulb. It was not elegant at all. Ka. However, the moment the ball of light appeared, the space around it started to twist and turn into a giant whirlpool as if it was controlled by some mysterious power. At the center of the twisted space was the ball of light that could destroy the world. What the hell is going on? Itsuka Kotori murmured. She thought Night Sword God Toka was already powerful enough, but after seeing the ball of light in Dustless's hand, she felt like her world had been turned upside down. Sprites or whatever compared to Dustless were too weak. Wang Su's flash. Dustless flicked his finger and released the ball of light. Kacha. The sharp sound of the air being torn apart continued to resound. Wang Su's flash flew out in a straight line. The space behind it collapsed and the void was completely annihilated, forming a black and terrifying gully. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2080. Boom boom boom. A fierce explosion swept across the area, and the shockwaves shattered the sky. When the shockwaves came into contact with the Night Sword God Toxiang, the latter felt powerless as if she had met her natural enemy. The high temperature and shockwaves from the void flash vaporized her instantly. Crack crack crack. Not only that, even the sky was shattered. The shockwaves from the void flash destroyed layers of space, twisting and shattering it. Boom boom boom. Looking up, a black hole of an extremely exaggerated scale was torn out in the sky where Dustless was. It was dark and boundless. The black hole seemed to be connected to the abyss of the universe, and it was filled with a piercing chill. How boring. Dustless shook his head, and a look of disappointment appeared on his face. Night Sword God Toxiang could not even arouse his interest. I lost? Night Sword God Toxiang dropped to her knees and looked at the crack in the sky. Her eyes were dark and empty. This was the first time she had suffered such a crushing defeat. Dustless had almost crushed her to the point where she could not even fight back. She turned her eyes and looked into Dustless's indifferent eyes. Night Sword God Toxiang said to herself in a daze, I lost? Will I be killed? Her calm eyes scanned the world around her. For some reason, a hint of reluctance flashed through Yadaoshin Toxiang's eyes. No one was willing to die. Every creature was infatuated with this colorful world, including Wu Chen. He had lived for hundreds of years and had never had the concept of death in his mind. If he could live, no one was willing to die. She slowly walked over and stared at the Night Blade God 10 incense. Wu Chen didn't say anything and just looked at her quietly. Are you here to kill me? Night Sword God Toxiang said in a low voice. Kill an elf? At this moment, an extremely astonished voice suddenly sounded, followed by a gust of wind that blocked Nightblade God 10 Incense's path. I will not allow it. The black shadow stopped, revealing a young body. Although he was young, his eyes were like torches, shining brightly. There was not the slightest bit of wavering or fear. Itsuka Kotori. Dustless glanced at the girl with the red ponytail and said calmly, I never said I was going to kill her. This matter has nothing to do with me. Is that so? Hearing this, Itsuka Kotori smiled and said, That's good. This girl will be ours from now on. Not us but mine. Dustless waved his hand and interrupted Itsuka Kotori. He then looked at Toka and said, I don't like to do things that don't benefit me. You don't seem to have anything to compensate me. At this point, Dustless lowered his voice and said flatly, As the saying goes, a gambling debt must be paid with your body. From now on you are mine. Who wants to be your slave? No way. It was rare that Toka and Itsuka Kotori were on the same side. Both of them rejected Dustless's conditions in unison. Because my fist is the biggest? Is that okay? Dustless looked down at the two girls and said casually, If you want to change the rules, you just have to make your fists bigger than mine one day. Challenge me and defeat me, then you can change the rules I set. You. Hearing this, Toka and Itsuka Kotori glared at him. Dustless didn't have the style of a strong person. His cold eyes didn't know what it meant to bully the weak. Everything was done according to one's desires. In other words, Dustless needed someone to take care of his daily life. Toka was the perfect candidate. Even though she was stronger and might rebel against Dustless in the future, it didn't matter. From now on you will be called Toka. Looking into the girl's eyes, Wu Chen's voice was like a breeze, invading Nightblade God Toka's ears. Nightblade God 10 Fragrance opened his mouth. He wanted to reject the name, but for some reason, his mouth seemed to have been sewn shut. He could not speak normally. That's not a bad name. Itsuka Kotori's eyes turned cold. Her first impression of the name was refreshing. I won't accept it. Toka rejected the name in a fit of pique. Dustless's arrogant tone and the way he looked at others made her very unhappy. You won't accept it? Buzz buzz buzz. Who would have thought that as soon as Nightblade God 10 Fragrance's voice fell, Wu Chen's palm emitted a huge light. I hate slaves who are disobedient or like to resist me. Of course, your hands and feet are on your body, so I can't stop you from resisting. But the premise is that you have to pay a heavy price. A threat? It was a blatant and direct threat. You? Toka's expression changed drastically. She stomped her feet in anger. Dustless was obviously threatening her. He was implying that if she resisted him, she would disappear from this world. You can resist me, but I advise you to think about the price you have to pay for challenging me. The lazy tone was like a shot in the arm. Toka's dissatisfaction quickly disappeared. After thinking for a while, it seemed that she had no choice but to agree to Dustless's conditions. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2081. Itsuka Shido stared at Dustless in a daze. His eyes were fixed on Dustless and he could not hide the shock in his eyes. What kind of freak is this guy? Everyone would feel lost when faced with something that defied the laws of physics, and Itsuka Shido was no exception. His eyes were filled with confusion. The strength that Dustless displayed deeply shocked Ito Shido. He finally realized how insignificant he was. He was simply a small fry that couldn't withstand a single blow. Of course, it was normal to feel this way. After all, the gap between them was too big. One was an ordinary human, and the other was a demon king who had destroyed many worlds. But then again, if we leave her at home, someone will find out sooner or later. Itsuka Kotori's eyes flashed with a hint of worry. Wu Chen only used his own strength to suppress Toka, he did not seal her power. If that was the case, the people from AST would find out sooner or later. Fairies could radiate psychic waves, and it was only a matter of time before they found out. So what if we are found out? Dustless looked at Itsuka Kotori and said calmly, We will deal with whatever comes our way. Don't worry. In fact, AST was already scared of Dustless, and they were afraid that they would not be able to escape. 3 days later, in the morning breeze was strong, and the sun was shining brightly. Gulu gulu. In Itsuka Kotori's house, Toka was gobbling up all the food on the table. She even ate Dustless and Kotori's portions. Dustless, who just came out of the bedroom, was speechless. He looked at Toka Toka, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He already knew that Toka Toka was a super glutton, and now he knew that she lived up to her reputation. Sigh. Itsuka Kotori also sighed and said, I plan to send Toka to school to learn about human society. I want her to fall in love with this world. If he wanted to rope someone in, he would first have to make her agree with this world. To put it simply, he had to brainwash her. I object. I reject your conditions. Wu Qin rejected Itsuka Kotori's offer without hesitation. He said coldly, You want to send her to school? The spiritual waves radiating from her body will be recognized sooner or later. She's just like a lamb entering a tiger's den. How foolish. And Dustless sat lazily on the sofa and snapped his fingers. 10 incense. I got it. Hearing Dustless's call, Toxiang immediately put down the food in her hand and ran over. She circled behind Dustless and massaged Dustless's shoulders. Her slender hands circled around Dustless's neck and gently kneaded it. Her technique was light and unique. Not bad. Dustless closed his eyes and nodded, occasionally revealing a satisfied smile. He seemed to be enjoying the service of the Night Blade God. You bastard! Itsuka Kotori's mouth twitched when she saw this. She looked at the obedient Night Blade God and couldn't help but complain. Can't you just beat him up? Show him your power as an elf. This servant is so obedient. Dustless turned his head and looked at the Night Blade God who was massaging his shoulders. He was quite satisfied. The Night Blade God 10 Fragrances was extremely obedient. Moreover, she didn't have a bad temper. As long as she was given delicious food, she would immediately become obedient to Wu Qin. Wouldn't it be crazy to send such a good servant to school? Anyway, I don't want Toka to go to school. Dustless picked up the snacks on the sofa and repeated. Humph, you're just afraid that no one will serve you if Toka leaves. Itsuka Kotori put her hands on her hips and looked at Dustless with dissatisfaction. This guy actually got an elf to massage his shoulders. He was too extravagant. Think what you want. Dustless ignored Itsuka Kotori's pestering and said lazily. Girl, don't forget that I am the one who subdued her with my strength. You have no right to interfere. You want to burn the bridge after crossing the river? Itsuka Kotori stared at Dustless angrily. Her tone was full of dissatisfaction. Forget it, Commander. There is nothing wrong with this. Seeing that Dustless wasn't giving in, Murasame Rain had to persuade him. It would be bad if Toka causes trouble in school. Leaving Night Blade God Toka at home might be boring, but at least Dustless would keep an eye on her. Nothing serious would happen. The weather looks good. Let's go out and have some fun. Dustless stretched his body and looked up at the bright sunlight outside the window. A faint smile appeared on his face. It wasn't easy to come to a new world, so it was only right for him to go out and have some fun. Anyone would feel bored even if they stayed at home. Go out and have some fun. Itsuka Kotori and Murasame Rain's eyes lit up when they heard this. Don't get the wrong idea. This is not a date. Besides, I don't have the ability to seal elves like Itsuka Shido. Your plan is just nonsense. When Wu Qin saw their joyful faces, he immediately understood that they had misunderstood. He couldn't help but shake his head. But even so, bringing Night Blade God Toka out to have some fun wasn't a bad idea. Dustless had to go out anyway, so it was safer to leave her alone at home. Who knows what kind of trouble she might cause. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2082. After all, he still had to stay in this world for a while and he couldn't stay at home for a long time, so he had to go out for a walk. This guy is still not cooperating at all. Kotori Five Rivers frowned, and her delicate little face was particularly ugly. Commander, it's useless even if Dustless cooperates. Murasame Rain took a sip of coffee and looked at Dustless and explained, even if Dustless can increase the favorability of the elves, it's useless. If it's Shido, it's fine. As for Dustless, it's a pity. I've investigated his body countless times. He doesn't have Shido's ability to seal the elves. That's true. Hearing this, Itsuka Kotori calmed down and muttered to herself, seems like I still need to rely on Shido. The dialogue between Murasame Rain and Itsuka Koto was very subtle and weak. Others could only see the lips biting, but Wu Qin was clear about it, and he even heard it all without missing a word. I don't have the ability? What a joke. Wu Qin smiled but didn't say anything. He closed his eyes and laughed in his heart. It's undeniable that I don't have the magical ability to seal energy like Itsuka Shido, but I have the system. Thinking of this, Wuqian grinned. So many years had passed and he hadn't used the system during this period. The reason was that his strength had reached such a level that the presence of the system was almost negligible. In most cases, the function of the system was limited to transmigration. Dustless's system's ability was also very simple. In the system he could train at will. As long as he killed the opponent, he could obtain all of the opponent's abilities. Otherwise, if he couldn't defeat the opponent, he would die. That kid Shido? He looked up and glanced at the picture frame on the wall. The brother and sister in the picture were Itsuka Kotori and Itsuka Shido. It's too easy to kill you. Dustless shook his head. Although Shido Itsuka was quite capable, his combat prowess was nothing to be proud of. If Dustless Itsuka killed him in the system, he would be able to obtain all of his abilities such as the special ability to seal spirits. Of course, the Ido Shido in the system had nothing to do with the Ido Shido in this world. The Ido Shido was created by the system consciousness, Ling Air. Even if it was killed, it had nothing to do with the Ido Shido in this world. There's nothing in this world that I can't get. Lazily sitting on the sofa, Dustless immersed himself in the system world and began to practice Ido Shido. Time passed quickly and in the blink of an eye, half an hour had passed. During this time, Dustless had also completed his training. He had successfully killed Shido Itoka in the system and obtained his unique ability to seal the power of spirits. The reason why it was so fast was because Shido's strength was too weak. He was weak in the real world and he was also weak in the system world and the real world. He was easily killed by Dustless. Therefore, Dustless also obtained Shido's ability to seal spirits. Strange, at the moment when she went out, Murasame Rain frowned, and the dark circles on both sides of her eyes disappeared. Her eyes were full of wisdom and strangeness that had never been seen before. What's wrong, Rain? Itsuka Kotori looked over and saw the strange look on her face. She smiled and joked, "Don't tell me you've detected elven psychic waves from Dustless?" For a long time, Dustless was thought to be an elf, but strangely no psychic wave was detected. Therefore, whether Dustless was a human or an elf had always been a mystery. That's not it. Murasame Rain shook her head and said strangely, Ratatosker base just sent a message. It seems that they detected the same physical data from Dustless as Shido. Gotcha. After she said that, Itsuka Kotori's eyes widened, and even the lollipop in her mouth was bitten into pieces. You mean, how is this possible? Why didn't they detect it before? Could it be that this kid was hiding? Forget it, it doesn't matter. Now that Dustless has the same physical data as Shido, that means... Itsuka Kotori's heart suddenly skipped a beat, and she immediately looked at Murasame Rain in disbelief. She already understood what it meant. You are right, Commander. Murasame Rain's back was also struggling, her head was dizzy, and she said inconceivably, I'm afraid that Wuqian has experienced some unknown transformation, and also has the ability to seal the power of elves like Shido. In the end, Murasame Rain's mind was also in a mess. She was responsible for collecting Dustless's data every day. Half an hour ago, Dustless didn't have this ability. Who would have thought that after only half an hour, this guy had such an amazing change? He inexplicably had the ability to seal spirits. This was too much. Don't be surprised, this is nothing. Don't say it's just a trick of Itsuka Shido. Turning his head and staring at the two dumbfounded people, Dustless disdainfully curled his lips, full of ridicule, and proudly said in his heart, as long as I want, I can also have the so-called elf's ability in an instant. No matter who it was, as long as he practiced in the system and killed the opponent, Dustless would get all the abilities of the opponent. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2083. Dustless was so invincible. Any ability of the enemy, as long as he wanted, could be obtained instantly. But the premise was that he must defeat the enemy in the system until he killed the enemy. Only then could he obtain the enemy's ability. In this case, Itsuka Kotori's gem eyes were shining. She glanced at Murasame Rain and asked eagerly, how much is the favorability of 10 fragrances for Wuqian? Favorability toward Dustless? Murasame Rain lowered her head and pondered for a moment and finally said, about 70%. At the beginning, Toka's favorability toward Dustless was close to 0, and even reached a negative level. But, then Murasame Rain's voice was full of helplessness and she smiled bitterly, the temptation of food is always invincible. Toka followed Dustless for a few days and ate a few days of delicious food, so her favorability toward him also skyrocketed. Is that so? I can only say that Dustless is lucky. Itsuka Kotori also sighed, and then she waved her hand and said, "It seems that we don't need to do anything, Dustless is enough to take care of Toka." Seems like it. On the other side, Dustless and Toka were walking together. "Look, Dustless, I want to eat that bread. Is this a hot dog? Give me 10 servings. I want to eat dessert." On the bustling street there were all kinds of dazzling food on both sides. The fragrance was overflowing. Even if Wu Qin had no appetite, he would feel hungry when he smelled the tempting fragrance, not to mention the big foodie Night Sword God 10 fragrance. Fortunately, Itsuka Kotori gave Dustless a lot of yen before they went out, so he didn't have to worry about money. This tastes really good. On the bench in the park, Dustless and Toka sat together, both of them holding ice cream in their hands. And Toka was holding a plastic bag full of food. "Yes, not bad, really not bad. I want to come out and play again next time." Yi Saber God Juxiang was overjoyed. Her delicate little face revealed a happy smile. She was very happy. Seriously. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry after seeing this scene. As the saying goes, contentment brings joy. Just some food was enough to make the dark saber god so happy that he couldn't tell north from south. An extremely unfamiliar voice suddenly sounded from behind. It was soft and gentle, making people unable to help but want to protect her. "You are..." Dustless subconsciously turned around to look, and his eyes were a little dazed. A cute face popped out from the dense grass. Her skin was as white as snow and her long blue hair gave people the impression that she was very beautiful. Her bright eyes were dotted with tears. Her pitiful appearance and timid tone made people want to protect her. "Is this the four bonsai?" Dustless muttered to himself in astonishment. His eyes widened. He did not expect to encounter Yoshino here. But what's with this outfit? Dustless frowned as he looked at the four bonsai. The girl's entire body was black, and her little face was also black. Even her clothes had traces of burn. Could it be that she was being hunted down? Dustless secretly guessed. The four bonsai was not good at fighting, and she had never dealt a heavy blow to the AST members who attacked her. The word kindness was written on her porcelain doll face. Could it be that she's hungry? Seeing the girl staring at the ice cream in his hand, Dustless's expression was rather strange. He immediately snatched the snack from Yi Saber God Juxiang's arms and handed it to the four bonsai. Hey, Dustless, that's mine." A foodie was indeed a foodie. Yi Saber God Juxiang immediately stomped his feet when the food was snatched away. The spiritual waves around his body also began to go berserk. He stared at Dustless as if he had killed his father. "I'll buy 10 times the amount later and return it to you." Dustless glanced at Yi Saber God Juxiang indifferently, and then slowly walked towards the four bonsai. "Are you for real?" The anger on his face immediately disappeared, and Yi Saber God Juxiang's face was filled with joy. His impression of Dustless skyrocketed. "That's a bit too much." Itsuka Kotori and the others who were secretly observing the situation were speechless. They didn't know whether to laugh or cry when they found out that Dustless's impression of Yi Saber God had dropped from 70% to 20% after he snatched her snacks. However, after Dustless promised to buy 10 times the amount of snacks for Juxiang, her impression of Yi Saber God Juxiang shot up like a rocket. Not only did it exceed 70%, it even reached 80%. "This foodie is so easy to win over," Itsuka Kotori sighed. She had a complicated expression on her face. It wasn't clear whether she thought that Dustless was lucky, or that Yi Saber God Juxiang was too stupid. Excuse me, are these all for me?" Looking at the snacks handed over by Wu Qin, Siwon looked at Wu Qin submissively. Her tone was very low. "Eat as much as you want." Dustless smiled and nodded. He stroked the girl's hair and asked, "You're an elf, right? How did you end up in such a sorry state?" "You know that I'm an elf?" Four bonsai's food suddenly stopped in front of her mouth. She looked at Dustless hesitantly. She was even a little cautious. After all, humans hated elves. It was normal for four bonsai to be cautious. "Don't be afraid." Dustless waved his hand and pointed at Juxiang. "She's called Yi Saber God Juxiang. She's an elf just like you. I'm different from the other ASTs. I'm your friend. Are you telling the truth?" The girl's tone was still light, but it was obvious that her impression of Dustless had improved. He had to admit that children were easy to fool. "Of course it's true. 10 fragrances is an example." Glancing at Night Blade God 10 fragrances, Wu Qin signaled her to release her power. Hey hey hey, who's your servant? I'm not. Hearing this, Toka immediately looked at Dustless with dissatisfaction, and said seriously, I'm not your servant, I'm just temporarily staying in your house. No, Kotori's house temporarily. Toka was very unwilling to resist. Dustless said that she was his servant in front of Janssen, and she felt embarrassed, so of course she had to refute this guy. At this time Janssen tugged at Dustless's sleeve and said softly, I want to be your servant too, can you help me find Janssen? Seriously, this guy's luck is too good. Itsuka Kotori, who was secretly observing, was speechless. She was shocked to find that just because Dustless had destroyed the missile attack and helped the 4 elementals, her favorability towards Dustless had skyrocketed. Janssen's heart is weak and she's just a child, so it's easy for her to rely on others. Rain Murasame was quite clear, and it was normal for her to have a favorable impression of someone who saved her. It was easy for a child to rely on others, especially a helpless child. What's the favorability of this elf Teen-chin now? Kotori asked curiously as she twitched the lollipop in her mouth. Around 60%. Rain Murasame nodded and then said seriously, if Dustless can really help her find her lost doll, her favorability would at least reach 80%, or even 90%. Really? Kotori was stunned, and then she waved her hand and said, we seem to be superfluous to Dustless. He doesn't seem to be good at dating, but he can always inadvertently win the favorability of the other party. Some things are just so magical. Rain Murasame also said with emotion, and it could only be said that it was fate. Damn it, why is that kid still haunting us? Last time when we carried out the mission to kill the princess, we also encountered this unlucky guy. As expected, the AST members who were rushing over noticed Dustless. Their expressions changed drastically, especially Daybreak Prairie Fire and Kite One Origami. Their delicate faces froze one after another. Captain, do we still need to continue the mission? Toby Origami asked with a rare lack of confidence. This? Liaozi's mouth twitched a few times and then she said helplessly, the mission ends here. When we go back we will say that the enemy escaped. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2085. The enemy ran away? The members of AST rolled their eyes when they heard this. The enemy was so close, yet she claimed that Dustless and the others ran away. Wasn't she lying through her teeth? However, even so, the other members of AST remained silent. It was obvious that they agreed with Blazing Sun's approach. Very well. When we return, report according to what I said. You guys discuss it and don't say anything wrong. Blazing Sun heaved a sigh of relief. She felt that the mountain hanging on her back had disappeared without a trace. It was not that Blazing Sun was afraid of Dustless, but the difference in strength between the two sides was too great. It was as simple as a cat toying with a mouse. The last time they captured the princess, Night Sword God Toka, they were played by Dustless. But he's really strange. Toichi Origami stared at Dustless, her pupils dilated slightly. Where did this guy come from? I've never detected psychic waves, but the density of the 2 elves beside him is extremely high. This? Blazing Sun's expression was also very strange. She could not help but mutter, no psychic waves? Could it be that we were wrong from the beginning? Is he a human? But, since when were humans so powerful? Since when were humans able to roam the sky without the help of external forces? Since when were weak humans able to defeat the fully equipped AST? It was reasonable to say that Dustless was not an elf. By the way, I have a new mission to assign. Blazing Sun's eyes flashed. Blazing Sun's gaze swept across the members of AST one by one. Seeing the cowering eyes of her team members, she could not help but sigh in disappointment. It's difficult to achieve great things. Blazing Sun looked up at the sky and sighed. Blazing Sun's gaze turned to Toichi Origami, who had a calm expression. She then said with satisfaction, Origami? That kid, you'll be in charge of monitoring him from now on. Me? When Yue Origami heard this, her fair face showed a rare emotional fluctuation. She pouted her sandalwood lips. Thinking of Wuchin's character, she had a sad feeling that she wanted to cry but had no tears. Itsuka Kotori's home. Even though Kotori had expected some progress in the relationship between Dustless and Dustless, she didn't expect Dustless to bring her back. You didn't even ask for my permission to bring her back? Do you really think of Wu-Hee's family as your own? Itsuka Kotori always had a lollipop in her mouth. With her arms akimbo, she stared at Dustless who was sleeping on the sofa. This guy was really too arrogant. He brought a person back and didn't even greet him, the owner. It was simply outrageous. This entire planet is mine. Wu Qin stretched and casually said, not to mention your family. Wait until you can defeat me one day, then you can come and fight against me. The strong will only use their fists to talk and the weak will only talk arrogantly. What an unreasonable guy. Itsuka Kotori's jade-like finger trembled as she pointed at the shameless Wu Chen. She could only stare helplessly. Looking at that annoying face, she couldn't wait to slap it. Itsuka Kotori opened her mouth and was about to mock Dustless, but then she heard a calm voice. Sealing the power of the power so that she can only feel shyness and other emotions? Why are you suddenly asking this? Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless strangely and said seriously, only Shido had this ability before but now. Itsuka Kotori was also confused. When she checked Dustless's body, only he could seal the power of spirits. But strangely when she checked Dustless's body, she got the same data as Itsuka Shido. In other words, Dustless could seal the power of spirits like Itsuka Shido. It's better to seal their power. Dustless looked at Toka and Yoshino and said impatiently, it's not a good thing to be too eye-catching, you know what I mean, right? Itsuka Kotori nodded. If he didn't seal their power it would attract a bunch of cockroaches. But it's too embarrassing. Dustless's expression changed and his tone became strange. Let's just go with the flow. There were some things he wasn't good at and he was already a few hundred years old. Time had already worn away his inner desires, so he didn't want to take the initiative to flirt with girls. Dong dong dong. At this moment there was a dull knock on the door. Itsuka Shido is back? Dustless frowned and looked unhappy. I'll go take a look. Itsuka Kotori went to open the door in her slippers, but the person she saw made her frown. Toka Origami? Looking at the person in front of her, Itsuka Kotori was depressed and thought, is this guy going to fight me? We're neighbors from now on, I'm just here to say hi. The girl's face was expressionless as if she was talking about something normal. In fact, Toka Origami had been peeking at Dustless. Itsuka Kotori wasn't her target. Itsuka Kotori felt like she was being ignored. Toka Origami was talking to her but she kept peeking at Dustless. Speaking of which, how did you become our neighbor? Itsuka Kotori raised her eyebrows as she recalled the main point of the story. You guys sure put in a lot of effort to keep an eye on me. Dustless sighed but he didn't mind. AST was a government agency, and it was easy for them to buy the house near Itsuka Kotori's house. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. The only thing left was disgust. A centuries-old figure stepping into the school again was a really unpleasant feeling. Look, who is that? He seems to be walking towards the physical education teacher's office. Could it be the new physical education teacher? This time, the principal finally has a conscience. He finally found a handsome physical education teacher. The group of students stared at Dustless in astonishment. Some of them even showed an expression of infatuation, and there were quite a few of them. Dustless felt helpless. He couldn't help but sigh. Sometimes being handsome was a sin. Hey. You're the new physical education teacher, right? At this moment, a rather light voice suddenly sounded. It was very pleasant to the ears, as pleasant as the sound of nature. The seductive voice made people want to hurry up and strike up a conversation as if it was filled with magic. Who is it? Curious, Dustless looked back. He had heard too many pleasant voices. The only thing that surprised him was that this pleasant voice sounded familiar. It's you? A graceful figure appeared in front of his eyes. An unexpected figure appeared in front of him. Dustless's pupils suddenly shrunk slightly, and a strong sense of disbelief flashed through his eyes. Isn't this Tokisaki Kurumi? Why is she in this school now? According to the development of the original work, it should be some time later. Dustless's face was full of puzzlement, and his brain power was somewhat overdrawn. It seems that my arrival has caused a butterfly effect. Some things have changed. Dustless muttered, and at the same time, he glanced at the smiling girl. Her appearance was peerless, her temperament was bewitching, and her eyes were like spring water. Her every move exuded charm, and between her frown and smile, one's thoughts seemed to be controlled by her, and one could not help but follow her thoughts. What a living seductress. Dustless sighed in his heart. Even though he had a calm mind for many years, he could not help but be aroused. To be able to make a centuries-old monster like Dustless feel desire, it was enough to show how charming Tokisaki Kurumi was. Phew! After taking a deep breath, Dustless's heart calmed down, and his eyes regained some clarity. Then, under Dustless's puzzled gaze, Tokisaki Kurumi slightly bowed to him politely. I'm also a new transfer student. Teacher, please take care of me. My name is Tokisaki Kurumi and I'm an elf. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2087. The only thing that surprised Dustless was that Tokisaki Kurumi actually took the initiative to approach him. Dustless didn't think that he was her target. This guy seems to want to fuse with Itsuka Shido. Staring at the smiling girl, Dustless frowned slightly. Her smile was like a spring breeze, making people want to open their hearts to her and confide in her. Not to mention being wary of her, it was a feeling of wanting to bow down to her. Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes narrowed into crescents. Her smile was sincere and polite. If Dustless wasn't a transmigrator, he might have been fooled by Tokisaki Kurumi. The girl's bright and gentle smile made it hard for people to doubt her. That's right. I'm your new physical education teacher. What can I do for you? Dustless's tone was indifferent. There was even a hint of rejection and disgust. As the saying goes, a weasel pays a visit to a chicken with bad intentions. Tokisaki Kurumi was exactly like that. She took the initiative to talk to Dustless for no good reason. Dustless couldn't even be polite to someone who had designs on him. What's with this guy's attitude? That's right. Don't tell me he's putting on an act for others? He's too pretentious. The surrounding students saw this scene and felt injustice for Tokisaki Kurumi. From their point of view, for such a cute girl to take the initiative to talk to Dustless, this guy's ancestors must have burned incense and prayed to the Bodhisattva for protection. The heavens must have given Dustless face. But now, his indifferent attitude made everyone jealous. This guy is too insensible. Isn't he just a little handsome? Why is he putting on airs? The surrounding students looked at Dustless unhappily and couldn't help but curse him. This guy actually dared to treat a gentle beauty like Tokisaki Kurumi coldly. He really deserved a beating. This bunch of idiots. Dustless was speechless when he saw everyone looking at him like he was an idiot. It would be fine if Tokisaki Kurumi was here to strike up a conversation, but it was clear that she had ill intentions. She was about to swallow him alive, yet he was still smiling at her so foolishly. Wasn't that an idiot? This guy. Tokisaki Kurumi was also in a daze. To be honest, she was very confident in her appearance. When she took the initiative to talk to others, they would usually be overjoyed. Only Dustless was an exception. Staring at Dustless, Tokisaki Kurumi's interest was piqued. Sensei, may I know your name? Tokisaki Kurumi bowed slightly and maintained her gentle smile. Dustless glanced at her, nodded and said, My name is Dustless. I'll be the physical education teacher of this school from now on. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Ouch. At this moment, Tokisaki Kurumi's face suddenly changed. Her rosy face instantly turned as white as snow. She looked extremely weak, as if she was sick. You're not feeling well? Dustless frowned and reminded her in a serious tone, If you're not feeling well, you should rest at home. Dustless sneered in his heart, Isn't this a little too fast? You were fine before and now you're sick? Sorry, I've been anemic since I was young. Sometimes I feel dizzy. Tokisaki Kurumi revealed an apologetic look and shyly looked at Dustless. Sensei, why don't you help me to the infirmary? Infirmary? Wu Qin frowned slightly. Soon after, he glanced at the weak young lady in an extremely bored manner. Subsequently, he left in a carefree manner under everyone's stunned gazes. Sorry, I don't have time and I don't know where the infirmary is. Please find someone else. After saying that, Dustless's figure gradually disappeared into the crowd, leaving behind a dumbfounded Tokisaki Kurumi. This guy is called Dustless, huh? Interesting, this is the first time I've seen someone who isn't interested in me. Tokisaki Kurumi licked her lips as a strange light flashed in her eyes. Prey that liked to struggle was actually the most interesting. Those who meekly submitted to adversity were, on the other hand, boring. Other than Itsuka Shido, I didn't expect there to be another interesting guy. I think he's the PE teacher in my class. Tokisaki Kurumi softly muttered as she looked at Dustless's back. Her gem-like eyes blossomed with beautiful colors. Despite being rejected by Dustless, Tokisaki Kurumi's delicate face didn't show the slightest bit of disappointment. Instead, she was grinning from ear to ear as if she had found a fun toy and skipped away. In fact, it was just as Dustless thought. Tokisaki Kurumi came to this school for Itsuka Shido. She dreamed of becoming one with him. What a boring woman. Although you're pretty, you think too highly of yourself. Dustless looked back at the girl's figure. Despite being separated by a sea of people, Tokisaki Kurumi's figure was clearly exposed. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. Dustless has seen many beautiful women. Although Tokisaki Kurumi was like a poison that made people want to put their hands in front of their mouths, hundreds of years of experience had already obliterated some of the primitive ambitions in Dustless's heart. He only had one impression of Tokisaki Kurumi: she was very ordinary. Moreover, in Dustless's opinion, Tokisaki Kurumi was an unmistakable jinx. Whoever she looked for would be unlucky, as if they were possessed by bad luck. Dustless wasn't talking nonsense. She would only target people that she was interested in, and those that Tokisaki Kurumi was interested in had all turned into corpses. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2088. In fact, Tokisaki Kurumi didn't take the initiative to talk to Dustless. She had her own intentions. Before this, Tokisaki Kurumi had inquired about Itsuka Shido. Unfortunately, for some unknown reason, Itsuka Shido was kicked out of his home. As for the reason, the instigator was none other than Wu Chen. Tokisaki Kurumi had always been puzzled about the reason. Until today she was still puzzled. Itsuka Shido was such an important person, yet he was kicked out of his home. She was curious about the reason behind it. I will see through your conspiracy sooner or later. Tokisaki Kurumi no longer hesitated and walked toward the school building. The farce came to an end. On the other side. Thank you, Mr. Principal. Take care, I won't see you out. In the empty school building, Dustless sent the principal off with a smile. He then turned around and stared at the beautiful girl with dark circles under her eyes. Pardon me for asking, but does it have anything to do with you that I'm a PE teacher? I say, aren't you guys overstepping your boundaries? Dustless looked at the silver-haired girl and asked curiously. Taking a closer look, this person's appearance was rather perfect, and her figure was not bad either. Her breasts were curvaceous and her delicate white skin was tinged with red. Her pink lips were as fragrant as the fragrance of roses, making people unable to resist the urge to go up and take a bite. However, the only flaw was the dark circles under her eyes, which seriously affected her beauty. Rain, you can go back. There's nothing for you to do here. Also, tell Itsuka Kotori to mind her own business. Dustless waved his hand and impatiently ordered her to leave. He then said, the 4 elemental plushie might be in Tokichi Origami and AST. I'll leave after I get it. However, Murasame Rain just smiled and didn't care. From now on, I'll be your assistant. Please give me your guidance. Little Chin. No, Dustless, Mr. Dustless. Let's get along peacefully in the future. Murasame Rain looked at Dustless's eyes, and finally quickly changed her words. If she called Dustless Little Chen, she didn't know why. She always felt very strange. Even though Dustless looked young and immature, the vicissitudes of life in his eyes and his carefree attitude towards everything did not seem like something a youth should possess. Assistant? Dustless rolled his eyes and said snappily, do whatever you want. I've already asked you to go back. Don't complain to me if anything happens in the future. Then Wu Chen sat at his desk and flipped through today's class schedule. Coincidentally, he found that the next PE class was Itoka Shido's class. You're giving me a pillow when I'm sleepy. Maybe I can resign and go home after a day as a PE teacher. Dustless stretched out, and a few playful arcs appeared on his face. It's good to tease young people occasionally. Looking at the playground outside the window, Dustless said to himself, you're not that old. Murasame Rain didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Dustless looked like he was only 18 or 19 years old. He was very young, but he spoke like he was young and mature. He gave people the feeling of a super old monster coming out of the coffin. By the way, it's worth mentioning that Toka also entered the school, and she is in the same class as Shido. Murasame Rain suddenly said. This should be arranged by Kotori and Itsuka, right? Frowning slightly, Dustless's tone was a bit low, and a strange color flashed on his cheeks. His bright eyes were flickering with thought-provoking light. You shouldn't be. As if discovering a new world, Murasame Rain looked at Dustless with a very shocked look. Suddenly she smiled and teased Dustless. You shouldn't be jealous of Shido and Toka being in the same class. Really, I thought you were a serious monk before. It turns out that you also have 7 emotions and 6 desires. Jealous? Wu Qin laughed involuntarily. What was there in this worthless world that was worthy of his jealousy? What was there that he couldn't get? Was there a need to be jealous of Shido? What was so special about him? Even if he had the unique ability to seal spirits, Dustless got it. Being jealous of Shido was completely empty. What I'm worried about is... Walking to the window, Wu Qin looked at the rows of teaching buildings not far away and suddenly smiled. I want to tell you that the relationship between Toka and Itoka Shido is very bad. I just hope that Toka won't suddenly pull out a sword to kill Itoka Shido after seeing him. Murasame Rain was stunned by Dustless's answer. After thinking about it carefully, what Dustless said was not unreasonable. When Ito Shido attacked Toka for the first time, it angered him. If it wasn't for Dustless, Ito Shido would have been killed by Toka. In fact, it was just as Dustless had guessed. In the classroom on the other side, Toka had just met Itoka Shido, and the two instantly had sparks. Why are you here? The Night Sword God Toka glared at Itoka Shirdao with displeasure. When Itoka Shirdao started sweating, she said angrily, being with a loser like you is really bad luck. What kind of evil thing did Shido do? Itsuka Kotori, who was in charge of monitoring Toka, was speechless. She was shocked to find that before meeting Shido, Toka's good mood was around 80%, but after meeting Shido, it almost dropped to 0. Did I offend you? It's none of my business. Itoka Shido looked at the angry Night Sword God Toka with a sad face. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. He felt like he had been shot while lying down. He hadn't done anything to provoke this fierce girl. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2089. Go Shido wanted to cry but had no tears. He said that he really didn't provoke Yato Toho, but he didn't know why Toho was against him, which really made Go Shido angry. It seems that I was right, these two people are really difficult to get along. Dustless's eyes narrowed into a crescent moon, and the corners of his mouth raised gently, with a faint gloating smile on his face. Although the distance was quite far, for him who had Sharingan this was not a big problem, it was just a small matter. It was worth mentioning that the development of the current world was not the world of the original work. The encounter between Go Shido and Yato Toho was completely ruined by Dustless, and the relationship between the two was extremely unpleasant. Of course, all of this was because of Wu Chen's mischief. They were originally a pair of immortal companions, yet they'd already become natural enemies that couldn't tolerate each other. All of this is because of you. Murasame Rain snorted discontentedly, and there was a rare trace of blame on her tired cheeks. Because of me? Hearing this, Dustless snorted and said, maybe it's because of me, but please don't forget, if it wasn't because of me, this city would have been destroyed by Yato Toho. That's right. Murasame Rain opened her mouth, and her throat seemed to be stuffed with a piece of bone, and it was difficult to continue to speak. She was speechless by Dustless's words. Dustless's words may be a bit alarmist, but it was undeniable that this was an out-and-out fact. It's one thing to be strong, but Wu Qin is really eloquent. Murasame Rain sighed and then sighed helplessly. Now Yato Toho was still angry, so it was better not to provoke her. I don't seem to have offended you. Inside the classroom, Itsuka Shido looked at Toka with fear. To be honest, he was really scared by her power. After all, one was an elf and the other was a human. Also, Itsuka Shido had seen the battle between Dustless and Toka Shido. Toka Shido was terrified. That Night Sword God, the teacher couldn't stand it anymore. Just as he was about to stop the two of them, a crisp bell suddenly rang. Ding ding ding. The bell signaling the end of class rang through the entire corridor. The originally quiet school instantly became noisy. I'll deal with you next time. Just you wait. She glared fiercely at Ohei Shirdao, then turned around and left arrogantly. Everyone in the class looked at this proud girl in shock. Remembering Dustless's orders, Night Blade God 10 Incense skipped away. This guy. Seeing Toka's figure, Itsuka Shido breathed a sigh of relief and muttered gloomily, is it because of what happened last time that she's so hostile toward me? When Night Blade God 10 Incense first came to this world, Kotori asked Itsuka Shido to talk to Night Blade God 10 Incense. However, Shido's luck was not good. Dustless happened to attack Night Blade God 10 Incense at that time, and Night Blade God 10 Incense, who didn't know it, put the blame on Itsuka Shido. Therefore, when the two sides met, there was a strong smell of gunpowder. If it wasn't for Dustless at that time, Itsuka Shido might have died. In the sports office. You silly girl. Wuchen looked at Nightblade God 10 Incense speechlessly and scolded angrily. I asked you to get Kite Origami's words and ask where the Forfune is. I didn't ask you to come to me now. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He shouldn't have asked such a serious question to Nightblade God 10 Incense. If she didn't do it right, Nightblade God 10 Incense might find out what she said. Forget it, I'll just find a chance to extract Nightblade God 10 Incense's memory. Dustless waved his hand and looked at Nightblade God 10 Incense impatiently. Go back to class, Nightblade God 10 Incense. I'll take care of Nightblade God 10 Incense. I'll be your new teacher in the next PE class. Don't be late. Suddenly Nightblade God 10 Incense opened her mouth and looked at Dustless expectantly. Shouldn't it be? Seeing this, the corner of Wu Chen's mouth twitched. He scolded angrily, Little girl, don't tell me you starved to death in your previous life. You just finished your breakfast not long ago, right? Can you eat so much? You let me work but you don't give me food. This is called docking the wages of laborers. I can sue you. Nightblade God 10 Incense said seriously with a pout. Even laborers come out. As an elf you really keep up with the times. Did you give her all these? Dustless looked at Murasame Rain gloomily, and the latter just shook her head in a daze. It seemed that she was about to fall asleep. Forget it, take it. Pointing to the transparent belt on the table, which was full of lunchboxes and various snacks, Dustless sighed. As for Nightblade God 10 Incense, I'll do it. Dustless's eyes narrowed. He just needed to find a suitable opportunity to extract her memory. In this way he could find the whereabouts of Shinoichi Origami. Dustless could also retire from this school. The ability of Rinnegan could extract the memory of others, but it would only hurt the soul of the other party. But after several years of use, Dustless's control of Rinnegan had reached an incredible level. Even if he used the eye power to search the other party's memory, it would not hurt their soul. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 evaluation votes plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2090. Ding ding ding, the bell rang signaling the start of class. The noisy school quieted down once again. The spacious field was filled with people, including Dustless and a few other familiar faces. You're on time. Dustless walked over from afar with a frivolous and lazy expression. He held his head in his hands and held a blade of grass in his mouth. He wore a white tracksuit and had a faint smile on his face. Compared to the teacher, Dustless looked more like he was taking a stroll. This new PE teacher is actually late for his first class. Does he even care about us? He's not serious at all. The bell rang for 5 minutes, but Dustless was still nowhere to be seen. This caused a group of students to be dissatisfied and they all started to complain. A bunch of brats are dissatisfied with me. A teasing tone suddenly brushed past everyone's ears. Everyone subconsciously looked over, and a young face entered everyone's ears. Dustless. A few people who knew Dustless were shocked. For example, Tabichi Origami and Itoka Shido were also in disbelief. Today is really strange. Itoka Shido muttered. Shido muttered to himself, 2 strange transfer students came out of nowhere, and even Wu Chen entered this school and became a teacher. The 2 transfer students were naturally Toka Toka and Tokisaki Kurumi. This is really interesting. Tokisaki Kurumi tilted her head with a strange light in her eyes. How dare you be dissatisfied with your teacher? Now run 10 laps around the field. Dustless ordered seriously. In his previous life he envied teachers who gave orders. Are you kidding? The students all stared at Dustless with their eyes wide open. Although they were dissatisfied they still ran. Many girls ran over to Dustless to ask for leave. Dustless also nodded in agreement. After all, they were on their menstrual cycle. He couldn't just ignore it. Why did you refuse my leave? Dustless, you must have done it on purpose. Yidao Shinshirxiang glared at Dustless. Her perfect face was filled with displeasure. Other girls could take leave but she couldn't. How preposterous. Everyone is different, Yizichin said. Dustless glanced at Nightblade God Toka and said seriously, unless your period comes, I can give you time to rest. What's menstruation? Nightblade God Toka was confused. How dare you ask for leave when you don't even know this? Dustless rolled his eyes and pointed at the field. Nightblade God 10 Fragrances just run 20 laps around the field. How dare you, 25 laps. I don't want to. 30 laps then. Dustless, you win. Just wait and see. Night Blade God 10 Fragrances stomped her feet. She looked like she wanted to swallow Dustless alive. However, she gave in the end. Dustless was her teacher and she wasn't as strong as Dustless. Night Blade God 10 Fragrances once disobeyed Dustless's orders. The consequences were disastrous. After Dustless suppressed her, she was stripped naked and exposed for hours. Although it was at home, Night Blade God 10 Fragrances still lost face. From then on, Dustless began to threaten her. If she disobeyed, he would strip her naked and throw her clothes on the street. Since then, Night Blade God 10 Fragrances didn't dare to disobey Dustless's orders. Although his methods were despicable, the effect was unparalleled. Night Blade God 10 Fragrances never disobeyed Dustless's orders again. What are you doing here? Tokizaki-san. Dustless lazily sat on the grass as he stared at Toshiaki Kurumi. He yawned and said casually, "Are you on leave as well? Are you also on your menstrual cycle? Do you have any evidence?" This guy is really shameless. Although she maintained a warm and bright smile on her face, Toshiaki Kurumi was cursing Dustless in her heart. Her period was here. What evidence did he need? Wasn't he just trying to make things difficult for her? How dare you fight with me? Dustless glanced at Toshiaki Kurumi and laughed in his heart. Don't think I don't know that you're on leave because you want to get close to Itsuka Shido. What period? T. Toshiaki Kurumi came to this school for one person, Itsuka Shido. She dreamed of the day when she and Itsuka Shido would become one. Even so, Dustless underestimated Toshiaki Kurumi and her boldness. The clear chirping of birds could be heard from the blue sky. The cool wind blew from afar, and the willow branches danced in the wind. Since Dustless and Toshiaki Kurumi were so close to each other, some of her hair was blown onto Dustless's face. It smells good. Dustless took a whiff and said subconsciously, "Teacher, I have proof that my menstrual cycle is here." At this moment, Tokisaki Kurumi looked at the dazed Wu Chen with a smile. "You can even prove something like that? Elves are indeed different from the rest." Dustless was stunned when he heard Toshiaki Kurumi's answer. Just as he was about to ask, Toshiaki Kurumi's next move shocked Dustless. Toshiaki Kurumi lifted her uniform skirt and revealed her white fatu. "Don't tell me." Seeing this, a trace of emotion flashed across Wu Chen's face. He finally understood how Tokisaki Kurumi proved that her period had arrived. Taking off her fatu just because of a disagreement. This Toshiaki Kurumi is really bold. Dustless couldn't help but sigh. If it was any other environment he could still accept it. However, they were in a public field. Toshiaki Kurumi actually wanted to take off her fatu in front of Dustless. Her boldness was enough to make anyone blush with shame. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2091. Her white breasts were smooth and flawless, causing one's imagination to run wild. Even Dustless, who had been calm for many years, felt ripples in his heart at this moment. Long stockings wrapped around her white thighs, revealing her flawless skin that was as exquisite as jade. Under the black stockings, her jade-like legs were faintly discernible, causing one's heartstrings to throb. Unknowingly, Dustless's breathing had quickened. "You really dare to take it off?" His aggressive gaze circled around Toshiaki Kuzo's trousers. Dustless's lips curled into a rare smile. In all fairness, Dustless didn't believe that Toshiaki Kuzo would be so daring as to take off her breasts in public. Only an idiot would do that. But even so, for the sake of being on the safe side, Dustless still secretly set up a gray barrier to prevent others from spying. This guy. Toshiaki Kuzo revealed her white breasts. When she saw that Dustless wasn't moved, she felt vexed and couldn't help but mutter, "Does this guy really want me to take off my breasts in front of him?" Toshiaki Kuzo was secretly depressed. She thought that it was just for show, but who would have thought that Dustless would look at her with such anticipation? If such a person could be a teacher, he was simply a beast in human face. "Student Toshiaki, how are you going to prove to me that your period is here?" Seeing Toshiaki Kuzo in a difficult position, Dustless held back his laughter and pretended to be calm. "If you don't prove it, I'll punish you by making you run 100 laps around the field." 100 laps. Hearing this, Toshiaki Kuzo's face flashed with anger. Her eyes clearly emitted a haze. Even though it was just a flash, Dustless caught it clearly. One lap around the school field was about 500 meters. 100 laps would be 500 by 100, which was almost 50,000 meters. You did it on purpose, didn't you? Finally, Tokisaki Kurumi could no longer maintain his composure and coldly said, "Brat, do you know how the word death is written?" Looking at Dustless's despicable face, Tokisaki Kurumi was certain that Dustless was doing this on purpose. "I really don't know how to write the word death." Dustless nodded. He looked at Tokisaki Kurumi and said seriously, "Why don't you teach me? This guy really doesn't know what's good for him." Hearing this, Tokisaki Kurumi was enraged. His calm eyes flashed with a savage light. He took out a spear and aimed it at Dustless. He laughed sinisterly. "Very well, I'll tell you how death is written. It's written with your blood." It was no wonder that Tokisaki Kurumi was so angry. Other girls could ask for leave if they were on their period, but when it was her turn, she had to strip off her fatness to verify her identity. How could she be so shameless? "You're on your period and you have a bad temper. Shoot me." Dustless lazily slept on the grass with his eyes closed. He said casually, "Tokisaki Kurumi, no, it's more appropriate to call you Incubus. That seems to be your code name. If you start a fight here, it'll be very difficult for you to sneak into this school in the future. You know I'm an elf." Hearing this, Tokisaki Kurumi's pupils shrank. Her body instinctively moved away from Dustless. "You're really forgetful. When we first met, didn't you take the initiative to introduce yourself as an elf? What a slow-witted girl." Dustless shook his head and picked up a blade of grass out of boredom. "How dare you mock me when I'm pointing a spear at you? You're just a mere human. How dare you?" Hearing this, Tokisaki Kurumi's expression turned cold and pulled the trigger. Bang! A large bullet was fired from the spear and headed straight for Dustless's head. "Goodbye, foolish human." Tokisaki Kurumi blew out a breath of hot air charmingly. A morbid smile appeared on her face as she stared straight at Dustless. She was enjoying the beauty of a dying person. When a person was about to die, they would reveal an unprecedented fear. This was also Tokisaki Kurumi's favorite moment. Puchi! The bullet tore through Dustless's head and pierced through it. The wound was large enough to fit an adult's fist. "How boring. At least let me admire your pitiful expression when you die. It'll be nice to have a memory." Tokisaki Kurumi was unhappy. Dustless remained calm until the moment of his death. "Then do you remember my pitiful expression?" A ghostly indifferent voice sounded out of nowhere. Then a cold wind blew behind her. Fear flashed through Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes as she turned around and fired without hesitation. Bang! Another large bullet flew out and hit the bullseye. An obvious hole appeared on the head of the person who spoke. One had to admit that Tokisaki Kurumi's marksmanship was indeed amazing. Even if she didn't look at the target, she could still explode the opponent's head with just her intuition. However, the strange thing was that even though the person's head was blown off and the bullet pierced through his left eye, his body was still standing firmly. His right eye was still quietly looking at Tokisaki Kurumi. His breathing was even and he was very calm. His delicate face stared straight at Tokisaki Kurumi. "You're not dead." Tokisaki Kurumi's tone was several times louder as she looked at Dustless in horror. After being shot in the head, this guy was still standing there as if nothing had happened. Was this still a weak human? If Dustless was an elf, he didn't have psychic waves and there had never been a male elf before. What kind of monster was this guy? "Didn't you say you were going to teach me how to write the word death? Haven't you finished it yet? What a lousy language teacher. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates." Chapter 2092. I underestimated him. Looking at the lazy Dustless cautiously, Tokisaki Kurumi felt a rare headache. She frowned when she saw the gap in Dustless's eye and her eyebrows were almost knitted together. Could it be that this guy can recover from any skill? Tokisaki Kurumi muttered to herself. Even though she spoke softly, the slick Dustless heard every word. "Recover? Bro." Dustless shook his head and explained softly, "You've never injured me, so how can you recover? This is just the elemental ability of the glint fruit. It can ignore all physical attacks." Ignore physical attacks? Tokisaki Kurumi was the first to recover from her shock. Her first reaction was to laugh out loud, mocking Dustless for overestimating himself. How could a mere mortal have such a heaven-defying ability like ignore physical attacks? What else could it be other than the ravings of a lunatic? That was simply wishful thinking. Surrender and I can give you a good job. Dustless's tone revealed a rare trace of gentleness. His expression was also very serious. Good job? Hearing this, Tokisaki Kurumi was stunned for a moment before she sneered, You know that I'm an elf, right? Do you think there's any job in this world that's suitable for elves? Tokisaki Kurumi sneered at the end of her sentence. In this world, no matter who it was, they hated elves. After all, every time they appeared they would cause a lot of trouble. They were almost synonymous with hate. This was especially true for the Eurasian air disaster that happened decades ago. It had taken the lives of hundreds of millions of people. Other people don't have jobs suitable for elves, but I do. Staring at Tokisaki Kurumi, Dustless smiled mysteriously and said seriously, I already have 2 servants, Yansei and Toka. Why don't you? Bang bang bang. However, before Dustless could continue his nonsense, a series of bullets were fired at him. Puchi. 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 Just like before, Dustless didn't dodge and allowed the bullet to pierce through his head. If an ordinary person's head was smashed and a few large holes appeared, they would naturally die without a doubt. However, there were exceptions to everything. In Dustless's head, after a few seconds, the wound was covered by light and quickly healed. New skin grew. Damn it, could it really ignore physical attacks? Tokisaki Kurumi clicked her tongue. Her eyes were fixed on Dustless, revealing a look of deep shock. Why would such a godlike ability appear in the hands of a gigolo? Tokisaki Kurumi pouted as she spoke in a sour tone. She was like a jealous little wife who had been scolded. There are many things you don't understand, such as this. Dustless turned into a stream of light and rushed out. This damn pervert. Seeing the incoming light, Tokisaki Kurumi was shocked, and her beautiful eyes were filled with panic. Dustless's speed was something that even an elf like her couldn't achieve, let alone a human. In her panic, Tokisaki Kurumi quickly pulled the trigger again. Bang bang bang. Several more bullets flew out and pierced through Dustless's body. Swish swish swish. But what was strange and puzzling was that even after being attacked, the speed of the light didn't change. The dazzling light continued to rush towards her. Can he really ignore physical attacks? Tokisaki Kurumi was helpless. Dustless's body was transparent. Even if she could see him, she couldn't hit him. All attacks were ineffective against him. Damn it, I didn't expect to use my true strength to deal with a human. Tokisaki Kurumi was unresigned. She seemed to be unhappy that she lost to a human. After all, there was a difference between humans and elves. But today, Tokisaki Kurumi was teased by an ordinary human like Wu Chen. Especially Wu Chen's disdainful tone and unyielding attitude made her feel uncomfortable. She was clearly looking down on others. Being suppressed by a human made Tokisaki Kurumi unhappy and aggrieved. Finally, after gathering all her emotions, Tokisaki Kurumi decided to use her true strength to teach Dustless a lesson. Boom boom boom. Tokisaki Kurumi's young and tender body suddenly erupted with a powerful energy fluctuation. Following that, her outer clothes burst apart and turned into a black and blood-red dress. At the same time, a huge clock hung behind Tokisaki Kurumi's back. Is this your angelic form? Dustless rubbed his chin with interest and said expectantly, Your ability seems to be called Carving Emperor, right? I remember that you can reverse time, teleport, and even slow down time. How do you know so much about my ability? Who told you that? Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes widened. It was hard to believe that Dustless was making it up. If that was the case, it would be too much of a coincidence. Everything Dustless said was true. That's not important. Dustless waved his arm and moved his thumb gently. Bring it on. Little Dot is going to release your most beautiful light. Don't ask me why, because this is your best performance. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2093. Even if you want to be arrogant, you should know when to stop. Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes were filled with hostility. Dustless's domineering tone was as if he was declaring ownership of an item, completely ignoring the feelings of others. This arrogant tone gave Tokisaki Kurumi the illusion that she was someone else's possession. Repent for your sins. Tokisaki Kurumi glared at Dustless as she suddenly aimed the rifle at her own head and pulled the trigger. One bullet. Bang. Without a doubt, Tokisaki Kurumi ended up with a headshot. But strangely, the moment her head was hit, Tokisaki Kurumi disappeared without a trace. This is... Dustless frowned as he began to look around. Go to hell. At this moment, a black shadow suddenly appeared in front of him. Dustless felt a cold sensation on his forehead. He looked up and saw a black muzzle aimed at his head. This is teleportation? Dustless's lips trembled as a rare fluctuation of emotion appeared in his voice. Farewell. Bang. With a sinister laugh, Tokisaki Kurumi decisively pulled the trigger. Puchi. Since the muzzle was aimed at Dustless's head, it was aimed at his forehead. The moment the bullet left the rifle, it tore apart Dustless's head. The penetrated head did not splatter brain matter as expected. Instead, a large amount of photons surged out from the wound. There was not even a trace of blood, let alone bright red brain matter. Damn it. Seeing this, Tokisaki Kurumi stomped her feet in anger. As I said before, I'm a flash person who ate the glint fruit. I can elementalize. This kind of pure physical attack is just asking for humiliation. Dustless shook his head as the wound on his forehead began to heal. I didn't expect you to be able to teleport. Dustless looked at Tokisaki Kurumi in surprise. He lowered his head and thought about her ability before shaking his head. No, it's not teleportation. It's time acceleration. You know very well? Tokisaki Kurumi's face tensed up. She had mixed feelings in her heart. She wanted to cry but had no tears. Her trick was seen through just once and this feeling was truly unpleasant. But so what if you can see through it? Can you block it? Looking at Dustless with disdain, Tokisaki Kurumi aimed at her own head again. She was extremely confident. What an ignorant little girl. Dustless shook his head and sighed. Soon after he raised a finger. If I wanted to kill you, you would have been killed 1,000 times within a minute. Under the speed of light, everything was laughable. You can try if you can. If you can stop me, I don't mind agreeing to your barbaric conditions. After all, the strong are the masters of this world. Tokisaki Kurumi charmingly smiled. Although her words sounded nice, her eyes were filled with contempt. She clearly didn't put Dustless in her eyes. Bang. Tokisaki Kurumi pulled the trigger again. The bullet from the rifle flew towards Dustless's head. At the same time, Dustless's figure gradually lost its texture and turned into a stream of light that rushed out. How fast was the bullet? That wasn't important. What was certain was that the bullet would pierce through Tokisaki Kurumi's head the moment it left the gun barrel. But what made Tokisaki Kurumi dumbfounded was that after a few seconds she was also fine. Where was the bullet? Out of curiosity, Tokisaki Kurumi looked over. It would have been better if she didn't look. After witnessing this shocking scene, Tokisaki Kurumi's pupils shrunk. Her beautiful eyes were filled with deep shock. She saw a seemingly delicate arm easily catch a golden bullet between her middle finger and index finger. She shifted her gaze and looked at the owner of the arm. The culprit was Dustless. Swish swish swish. After being stunned for a few seconds, Tokisaki Kurumi hurriedly retreated. Fortunately, I reacted fast enough. Otherwise, I would have been killed by this guy. After putting some distance between herself and Dustless, Tokisaki Kurumi heaved a sigh of relief. You reacted fast enough? The cold voice carried with it a cold wind. Tokisaki Kurumi immediately shivered. This feeling was no different from falling into an ice cave. It was suffocating. Who is it? Tokisaki Kurumi raised her head in fear. Being stared at by this ruthless gaze, she felt like she was wandering in hell. What a boastful little girl. The cold voice sounded again, reflecting endless ridicule and disdain. It's you? Following the source of the voice, she saw Dustless. Your reaction is fast? You think too highly of yourself. In front of the speed of light, do you think your fast reaction is useful? I really don't know where your morbid confidence comes from. What a joke. Any move under the speed of light was futile. Child's play. Dustless threw out the rifle bullet in his hand. He crossed his arms and said lazily, Carving Emperor's long needle and short needle are ancient rifles and pistols respectively. They fire Carving Emperor's ability as bullets. If the bullet doesn't hit the target, you won't be able to activate your ability. In other words, the moment you fire the bullet, I can completely stop it, Dustless said confidently. The bullet was fast, but it was still a far cry from the speed of light. This guy. Tokisaki Kurumi's expression changed. Her hair on both sides of her temples was covered in water droplets. If it was in the past, Tokisaki Kurumi would have treated this as a joke. However, looking at Carving Emperor's bullet on the ground, Tokisaki Kurumi couldn't laugh. This bullet was intercepted by Dustless. It was the bullet she fired. The moment it was about to shatter her head, it was intercepted by Dustless. If the bullet couldn't hit the target and Carving Emperor's ability couldn't be activated, then Tokisaki Kurumi, an elf, became immortal. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2094. In this world, there was no invincible ability. Every ability had a flaw that no one knew about. It was invincible now because no one had discovered its weakness. For example, Dustless's glinting fruit elementization ability was invincible in this world. But in the previous world where pirates were everywhere, they could easily touch Dustless's body, such as armament hockey and sea stone. The reason why Tokisaki Kurumi could run rampant in the past was because she hadn't met a natural enemy. But this time she was unlucky. She didn't look at the almanac when she went out and met a powerful enemy like Dustless. My chances of winning are slim, maybe even none. Tokisaki Kurumi was quite unwilling to give up. She calculated the chances of winning and helplessly found that she didn't have the ability to fight Dustless. Dustless's speed was faster than the speed of a bullet. In other words, he could easily defeat Tokisaki Kurumi before she used her ability. Blocking the bullet with his bare hands was the best example. I lost. She threw away the two guns in her hand and seemed to have accepted her fate. It wasn't that she wanted to surrender. The ability of Emperor was actually a bullet. If it couldn't hit the target, the ability couldn't be used. Kill me if you have the guts. Even if she was at her wit's end, Tokisaki Kurumi still bit her thin lips and looked at Dustless very stubbornly. She sneered, "If you don't kill me, I won't let you go and harass you for the rest of your life." As her voice fell, Tokisaki Kurumi's different-colored eyes flashed with a cold chill. She threatened, "Not only you but also your two little servants, Nightsword God Toka and Yoshino, I will bury them with me. Harass me for the rest of my life?" Hearing this, Dustless's expression was extremely strange. He said sarcastically, "I remember that you didn't want to be my maid. Now you want to harass me for the rest of my life. You exposed your shameless heart and still want to harass me for the rest of my life. Shameless woman." Puchi. Tokisaki Kurumi almost vomited blood. She looked at Dustless with fire in her eyes. "If you don't kill me when you fall into my hands in the future, I will make you beg for death. That's it?" Although Tokisaki Kurumi's tone was harsh and aggressive, as if she wanted to swallow Dustless alive, the latter's reaction was calm. There wasn't even a trace of anger. "Tokisaki Kurumi? Stop trying to be smart. Do you think I don't know your abilities?" Dustless's cold face raised a bit of mockery. He said sarcastically, "Carve Emperor's bullet of 8 can make his past reappear. Although the doppelganger doesn't have the strength of the main body, it has its own will and spiritual equipment. It can be stored indefinitely in the shadow, and can be summoned at any time before it is used up." This was also the reason why Tokisaki Kurumi could revive after being killed so many times. "Who told you all this?" Tokisaki Kurumi sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at Dustless in a daze. She naturally wouldn't tell a stranger about her trump card, so where did Dustless learn about it? Even if it was nonsense, it was too much of a coincidence and what he said was true. "Who told me? In fact, it's very simple. Maybe I have the same ability as you. Maybe it's just a guess of our abilities." Wu Qin shrugged perfunctorily. Of course, he wouldn't say that he had transmigrated. "That's why I won't kill you. Even if I do, it's useless. You'll revive." Suddenly Dustless rubbed his chin. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing a teasing smile. "Since I can't kill you, I'll torture you. What are you trying to do?" Tokisaki Kurumi's heart skipped a beat when she heard this. She knew that things weren't going well and subconsciously took a step back. "I can't forgive someone who is hostile to me and dares to provoke me. Don't worry, I just want to give you a punishment that you'll never forget." Dustless walked over slowly. Every step he took, Tokisaki Kurumi would feel an inexplicable pressure. She couldn't help but feel irritated. Bam! Tokisaki Kurumi was stunned when she bumped into something behind her. "This is Lai Chanhai's field. Where did the wall come from?" The moment she turned her head, Tokisaki Kurumi was stunned. She suddenly realized that she and Dustless were trapped in a small transparent space. "Is this a barrier? When was it set up? No wonder no one paid attention to our duel." Tokisaki Kurumi touched the invisible but real barrier in a daze. The hard touch made her feel a little dazed. To be able to set up a barrier without being noticed by Tokisaki Kurumi, was it because she was too engrossed in it, or was Dustless just too mysterious? Could it be? She stared straight at Dustless. Tokisaki Kurumi stared straight at Dustless. Her eyes flickered non-stop. Girls tend to have wild imaginations. With such strength, could it be that she's the starter sprite? Dustless's strength was terrifying. He was definitely not an ordinary human, nor was he like AST's Tokichi Origami. He did not need to rely on equipment. Dustless relied on his own strength. Starter sprite? Although Tokisaki Kurumi's voice was soft, Dustless still heard it. What the hell is that? I'm not, and I don't know much about it. I'm not interested in knowing. All you need to know is that anyone who dares to be presumptuous in my territory must be punished. Your territory? Tokisaki Kurumi had a strange expression. She looked at the huge field. Could it be that Dustless's territory was Xianxia? I'm talking about this planet, Dustless added after seeing the confused look on the girl's face. All right, Tokisaki Kurumi, accept your punishment. As soon as he finished speaking, Dustless blinked to Tokisaki Kurumi's side. His sudden action almost made Tokisaki Kurumi vomit blood. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2095. Dustless skillfully lifted Tokisaki Kurumi's skirt, exposing her fair skin to Dustless. Bastard, put it down? Tokisaki Kurumi felt a chill on her buttocks. She yelled angrily and slapped Dustless out of reflex. You still want to resist? Seeing this, Wuxian smiled disdainfully and easily grabbed the attacking arm. Damn it! With her arm caught, Tokisaki Kurumi struggled with all her might and cursed, Damn you, you better kill me or else I'll... Or else what? Wuxian sneered when he heard that. The arm that was raised high fell down. Slap. A bright red palm print appeared on Tokisaki Kurumi's buttocks. This time Wuxian didn't show any mercy at all. The clear red palm print occupied a quarter of the entire area of her perky buttocks. On her fair skin, the palm print was particularly conspicuous. You're already a captive and you still dare to be so arrogant. If I don't teach you a lesson, you'll really think that I'm the reincarnation of a merciful bodhisattva. Dustless looked into Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes and chuckled. How is it? How do you feel? Do you still want to resist? Why don't I do it again? As he spoke, Dustless raised his arm. No. Tokisaki Kurumi gritted her teeth in pain. Tears welled up in her eyes. She purposely said in a coquettish tone, I'll obey you, okay? As long as you don't hit me, I'll do anything to you. Phew. Tokisaki Kurumi moved closer to Dustless's ear and blew a mouthful of hot air into Dustless's right ear. Don't doubt my words. A strong man like you is very likable. Dustless remained silent. He didn't respond, nor did he reject Tokisaki Kurumi's provocation. However, he didn't accept it either. Humph, although you're a little strong, you're still just a lecher in the end. Seeing Dustless's silence, Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes glinted. She knew that she had a chance. Silence meant tacit consent. She stretched her waist and displayed her graceful body to Dustless. It had to be said that Toshiaki Kurumi was a true seductress. Her figure was great and her appearance was impeccable. The places that were supposed to be protruding were not flat, and the places that were supposed to be protruding were also protruding. Especially Toshiaki Kurumi, who was different from the elves. She was extremely bold and would not be restrained by worldly norms. She was a seductress that could make one's blood boil. Am I pretty? Blinking her crystalline pupils, Tokisaki Kurumi purposely used some sensitive parts of her body in an attempt to draw out the evil fire in his heart. However, Dustless only glanced at Tokisaki Kurumi. His casual reply almost made her vomit blood. Not bad. You have a nose and eyes. Dustless glanced at Tokisaki Kurumi and answered casually. You. Tokisaki Kurumi's mouth twitched. If she could, she would have bitten Dustless to death. What kind of reply was that? Who didn't have eyes and nose? He was obviously trying to brush her off. You still dare to pretend to be calm? Tokisaki Kurumi glared at Dustless and sneered inwardly. Don't think that you're not a lecherous bastard just because you're pretending to be calm. How about I dance for you? Tokisaki Kurumi said with a smile as she swayed her snake-like waist. Really? Dustless's bored eyes lit up. He nodded silently. Try to be quick. Humph. Tokisaki Kurumi snorted in her mind. She wanted to use this dance to confuse Dustless or find a chance to escape. After pulling away from Wu Qin for a while, Tokisaki Kurumi lightly tapped on the grass with her feet. Soon after, her graceful body soared into the air like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. Her graceful body gently rotated, looking quite artistic. In terms of dancing, although Dustless was a layman, he was still a little dazed. What a lecherous bastard. Tokisaki Kurumi saw Dustless staring at her in a daze. She couldn't help but feel proud. Dustless was like a monk who didn't care about her. Now he was staring at her in a daze. It was obvious that it was all an act. Men are really lecherous bastards. Tokisaki Kurumi snorted and began to ponder. What kind of method should I use to escape? Should I use a direct method? Come here. A satisfied voice suddenly sounded. Tokisaki Kurumi snapped out of her thoughts. She turned to look at Dustless, who was looking at her with interest, and frowned. Is this guy trying to make me do it? Tokisaki Kurumi was nervous. If Dustless used force, she couldn't do anything. She couldn't use her ability and could only wait for death. Very good. Not bad. Dustless gave her a thumbs up and looked at Tokisaki Kurumi. How about this? How? Tokisaki Kurumi, who was close to Dustless, subconsciously took a step back. This guy was going to use force. You're good at gymnastics. I'll leave the task of teaching everyone radio gymnastics to you, Dustless said with satisfaction as he patted Tokisaki Kurumi's shoulder. Gymnastics? Tokisaki Kurumi looked at Dustless with a dumbfounded expression. That's ballet, not radio gymnastics. She yelled frantically. Dustless scratched his head awkwardly and said apologetically, so it's dancing. I thought you were performing radio gymnastics for me. I even wanted to ask you to be my PE class representative. Tokisaki Kurumi fainted from anger after hearing Dustless's answer. She was foaming at the mouth and regretting communicating with Dustless. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2096. But there were some things that could not be easily resolved. Just like the current situation, how did Dustless take away his pendant? Chong Gongjin expressed that he did not feel anything at all. He did not even look at it. Looks like my training is not enough. Thinking of this, Chong Gongjina suffered a great blow. If Wu Qin had wanted to kill him just now, perhaps he would have become a corpse. He's just an elf. I'm not going to keep quiet after being humiliated like this. Chong Gongjin gritted his teeth and looked at Dustless with hatred. Who is this? Out of curiosity, Dustless opened the accessory in his hand. What came into view was an old photo. The people in the photo were two young children, both of them had blue hair. The two children were very young, probably only a few years old. Who allowed you to look at other people's belongings? Chong Gongjin's face flashed with anger when he saw this. He tiptoed lightly and rushed forward. Slash. The sword light cut through Dustless's body. However, the feeling this time was different from before. Chong Gongjin clearly felt that he had hit something hard and looked over subconsciously. How is this possible? How can a human know an elf's body be so hard? Chong Gongjin's eyes widened and almost fell out. He looked over and saw that the person who blocked the beam saber was a fair finger. Her skin was as white as snow, and her skin was as smooth as a newborn baby's. It was this finger that looked like it could not withstand a single blow, as if it would break at any moment. However, at this moment, it was extraordinarily sturdy, unbelievably blocking the tip of the beam saber. What's there to be surprised about? Dustless carefully examined the girl's shocked expression. He teased her softly and said, being too shocked only shows that you are narrow-minded. However, it's normal for you to be shocked. If I didn't have some means to shock you, how could I tame that stubborn little elf, Nightsword God Toka, with my fists? Not everyone was like Itsuka Shido, who had countless beautiful girls throwing themselves at him when his protagonist aura was slightly activated. Dustless did not think that he had that kind of charisma. Of course he didn't need it. In this world only the fist was the absolute truth. For those who were not convinced, they could use their fists to make the other party make the right choice. Don't flatter yourself. Chong Gongjin, who was extremely displeased, suddenly retreated in a flash when he heard this. He stopped when he was a dozen meters away from Dustless. Soon after, a piercing cold light shot out from his eyes. He forcefully stomped his feet on the ground and charged over at an even more terrifying speed. Just a mere sprite. The incomparably sharp laser blade slashed towards Dustless's head. You're calling me an elf again? Forget it, you can think whatever you want. Hearing this, Dustless only shook his head and smiled without saying anything. All along he had been thought of as an elf, the incarnation of evil. However, Dustless didn't care about this and was too lazy to explain. In any case, in this long life of his, he was often misunderstood. Swish, swish. A light blade that could cut through iron like mud descended from the sky, and it looked like it was about to crush Dustless's head. The scene seemed to have frozen and time seemed to have stopped at this moment. At this moment, Dustless suddenly opened his arms, and a turbulent repulsive force erupted from his body. Chakra instantly erupted. Shinra Tensei. Bang. Xuanhuan's little face instantly turned pale as if he had been slapped in the face. His body flew out in a sorry state. What kind of elf is this guy? At first I thought he could manipulate light, but now it seems that it's not that simple. He can even manipulate an unimaginable force like repulsive force. Xuanhuan supported his trembling body and looked at Dustless warily. He muttered to himself cautiously, "This is the first time I've seen a male elf. Are they all so powerful?" Xuanhuan's little face kept changing. He stared at Dustless's calm expression and felt an inexplicable pressure. He was sure that this annoying guy had not even used 1/10 of his strength. Otherwise he wouldn't be so calm. "Young lady, keep coming. Are you going to give up?" Dustless curled his fingers and said with a smile, "Your brother is a very strange person. Now his sister is also different from the rest. It's rare. How about this? Seeing that you have an excellent constitution and delicate features, I think you'll have a better future if you join me." "Dream on. I'm not so low as to join the elves." Xuanhuan snorted coldly and rejected Dustless's offer. Then he swooped down again. Like a moth to the flame. Seeing this, Dustless shook his head helplessly and narrowed his eyes slightly. The moment Xuanhuan was about to make contact with him, his right arm suddenly shot out like lightning. Bang! He grabbed Xuanhuan's neck skillfully, smashed him to the ground and held him down tightly. Cough, cough, cough. With his throat grabbed, Xuanhuan coughed and struggled with all his might. He kicked Dustless with all his might and attacked his vital parts. "Young lady, the game of house is over." Dustless smiled as he grabbed the young lady's throat easily. "Also, I advise you not to resist me. If I use a little more force, your throat will be crushed in an instant. Bones mixed with blood. Do you want to see how beautiful they are?" This sentence was like a sharp awl piercing into Xuanhuan's chest. His limbs, which were still resisting, calmed down. His dull eyes stared straight at Dustless. "That's more like it." Dustless smiled and let go of his arm. The moment he let go of Xuanhuan's neck, something strange happened. Chapter 2097. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A black shadow leaped into the air with a sharp blade in his hand. He aimed at Dustless's back with a ferocious expression and stabbed down with all his might. Crack. Dustless's back was pierced through like a piece of paper by the mysterious person, leaving a huge hole. "It's not over yet." Xianxia, who had freed herself from the struggle, revealed a ferocious expression. She held a beam saber in her hand and slashed down without hesitation. Puchi. The previous insult had obviously provoked Xianxia's anger. She slashed Dustless's head with her sword. Puchi. 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 As if she was still angry, Xianxia slashed down with her sword again. After slicing Dustless's body into 8 pieces, she stopped with satisfaction. Huff, huff, huff. Although it happened in a split second, Xianxia had slashed dozens of times. She was exhausted. Beads of sweat slowly dripped down her hair. "Thank you, Tashiichi Origami." While wiping her sweat, Xianxia thanked Tashiichi Origami with a smile. She praised, "So you were pretending to be unconscious all this time. You're really smart." "It's not that I'm smart." Tashiichi Origami glanced at Xianxia and analyzed, "In the end, this guy was too careless. He thought he was invincible. He underestimated us." And Tashiichi Origami seemed to have recalled something. Her eyes were rolling. "I heard your conversation just now. Your brother is Itsuka Shido? I forgot to tell you. I'm his girlfriend. If you don't mind, you can call me sister-in-law." "Sister-in-law?" Xianxia eyes suddenly shrunk. She was stunned. Yes. As if she was narrating something very ordinary, Tashiichi Origami's tone was calm. He's liked me for many years. I've liked him for many years too. Many years? Xianxia broke out in cold sweat. How many years was many years? Itsuka Shido was around 17 years old this year. Buzz buzz buzz. Suddenly an unusual dazzling light flashed in the dark enclosed space. The huge flash was as dazzling as the sun. The two girls instinctively closed their eyes. This light, could it be that the guy has revived again? Chong Gongzhen's tone carried a trace of unconcealable shock. Just as he was about to step forward to find out what was going on, he suddenly felt a chill on his back, as if he had been targeted by the god of death. What a heartless girl who likes to bite the hand that feeds her. I didn't kill you just now, but you cut me into 8 pieces. I must teach you a lesson. The moment he finished speaking, Chong Gongzhina was shocked to find that he was being picked up. Let me go, don't touch me with your dirty hands or I'll chop you up. Chong Gongzhen blushed and turned his head to glare at Dustless. To his grief and indignation, he found that he was like a pet that was simply picked up by Dustless. No matter how hard he struggled, he could not escape from the devil's grasp. You want to chop me up? You deserve a beating. Dustless raised his arm and stared at the girl's fair legs. They were flawless, as beautiful and clean as snow. However, this was not Dustless's target. What kind of crappy equipment is this? Are you trying to go against me? Staring at the girls, but Dustless frowned. Chong Gongzhina's but was covered by the AST members' equipment. There was no place for him to attack. He wants to hit my butt. Fortunately, I have the equipment to block it for me, or else this stinky hooligan would have succeeded. Seeing Dustless frowning, Chong Gongzhina, who had been defeated, showed a rare hint of joy. She suddenly felt that this heavy equipment was too fitting. You should give up. Kill me if you have the guts. Chong Gongzhina's eyes regained some color and her tone sounded rather arrogant. I'm a very kind person. If you want to give up, then I'll give up. Besides, you're so cute, I can't bear to kill you. Dustless smiled mysteriously. Then you should just let us go. I promise that I won't trouble you in the future. Chong Gongzhina purposely acted coquettishly, her small face showing a very cute curve. Tiske, I can spare your life, but punishment is necessary. The mysterious smile on Dustless's face turned into a teasing one. What are you trying to do? Chong Gongzhina felt numb after being stared at by Dustless's sneaky eyes. She felt a sense of fear that she had never felt before. That pair of bright eyes was terrifying, as if they were going to swallow her alive. Don't worry, it's nothing difficult. I just want to explore your body. Dustless smiled casually. Explore my body? Chong Gongzhina suddenly panicked and shouted, Don't you mess around. Let me tell you I'm sick there. And I'm having my period. Sick there? Upon hearing that, Dustless was stunned for a moment. Looking at the terrified face of the young girl, he pondered for a while and his eyes flashed with understanding. He sneered and said, Little brat, although you're not bad looking and will be a beauty in the future, you think too highly of yourself. You're not worthy of having sex with me. Chong Gongzhina was enraged by Dustless's words. Her face turned red as she said, Didn't you say that you wanted to explore my body? Yes. Dustless nodded and said lazily, I said that because there's something wrong with your body. Someone has done something to it. You can only live for about 10 years at most. If I don't save you, you'll definitely die. And now you're delusional enough to think that I'll marry a little girl like you. Even if you're narcissistic, there's a limit to it. You're not worthy of me. Upon hearing that, Chong Gongzhina was so enraged by Dustless that she started foaming at the mouth. In the end, she rolled her eyes and fainted like Tokisaki Kurumi. Those words were too hurtful. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.